Hey, Soul Tribe, welcome back. This is a very special double episode of Beyond Deconstructing Neurodivergence. I'm your host, T Jamaica Pogue, affectionately known as Deconstructing Neuro. And if you guys didn't notice, last week we did not have a new episode, and this week's episode is a double episode, kind of to make up for the fact that I was not nearly capable of being productive last week. And I also was trying to really think about how I wanted to further share my thoughts on the current situation in the Middle East and in Africa and a lot of the things that we've been talking about. I personally needed a break. And I don't shame anybody else who needed a break. This is something that a lot of us, even if we have been doing social justice work and raising awareness, it can be heavy, especially if you have a lot of other things going on in your personal life. So adding on top of that, being highly visible and highly active in a time that is that a lot of information is being thrown at people, and you have to combat this misinformation and try to help people see things from a different perspective, and it can take its toll. So I needed last week off to refresh myself, refill my stores. But in that time, I was also able to have a conversation with a returning guest that I am really appreciative to have the opportunity to share with you guys, because again, a lot of us are facing a lot of burnout just by being autistic people existing in this world. But then on top of that, if you're someone like me who has been trying to find ways to use your platform and use your voice to elevate the voices of those who are being silenced and oppressed, this will be a great conversation for you guys to kind of just feel that validation in your struggle, to be seen, to be appreciated for your efforts, and to also give you some really good and salient advice on how you can show up in ways that you may not have thought of, but fit more within the level or the capacity that you actually have to give in this time. So really looking forward to sharing this special double episode with you guys. So without further ado, let's jump into the first interview we have in store for you today. And I have the privilege of introducing you to a voice of wisdom, healing, and profound self-acceptance. Praise Aura is not just an advocate for self-care, trauma healing, and wellness. I consider her a beacon of light in the world of neurodivergent perspectives. So this world is often obsessed with self-improvement and the notion of fixing ourselves. But Praise Aura's message is a refreshing and essential reminder that we are not a self-improvement project, we are not a broken thing in need of fixing, and we are enough just as we are. Her words resonate deeply, reminding us all of the intrinsic worth we carry within ourselves. And what sets Praise Aura apart is not just her message, but her unique perspective and concise approach to deconstructing shared experiences within the autistic community. Her insights have a profound impact, challenging us to see the world through a different lens and to embrace our neurodivergent identities without reservation. Her emphasis on addressing intersectionality and the role of trauma in our diagnosis strikes a chord with many in the autistic community, and she courageously navigates these complex intersections, shining a light on the layers of our identities and experiences that often go unnoticed. So I'm super excited to share with you guys this conversation that I had, and I hope that you enjoy joining us as we explore the depths of her wisdom and the transformative power of self-acceptance and the importance of addressing trauma within the neurodivergent journey. I am so excited to have today's guest on, Praise Aura. I instantly connected with you when I saw your content on TikTok, and now I follow you on YouTube as well. So I'm excited to introduce you to my audience. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm Praise Aura. I am a content creator, and I also somehow managed to work full time as well. And yeah, I am neurodivergent. I have autism and I have ADHD, and it's been a discovery. It's been a journey. And yeah.
Awesome. And we are definitely going to explore more of that journey. Actually, I want to begin by giving you an opportunity to share with my audience kind of your journey with discovering that you are autistic and have ADHD and how that has impacted your current trajectory.
Yes. So lockdown happened because of the pandemic. And so everyone was like at home. And I, as much as I didn't like not being able to see friends and family and stuff, I actually really enjoyed just being at home. And I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it until the world opened back up again. And I was kind of faced with all of the social norms and values, and I felt very out of practice. And I discovered ADHD first because I was scrolling on TikTok, and I just kept certain like videos just kept resonating with me. And I was like, I relate to this and also to this. Maybe I have ADHD. And I kind of ran from it for a little while. And I was like, I don't want to ascribe this to myself until I'm absolutely sure. And then I would see more and more and more things. I was like, yeah, I have an ADHD brain. So I'd come to terms with that. And I knew what traits of mine I could account to, I could ascribe to ADHD and I could attribute to that. And there was still more. It was like, I get it, but something's missing. I had stepped away from TikTok because I realized I was spending way too much time on there. And then I jumped back on the app because peer pressure. And I was seeing ADHD TikToks, and then I was seeing TikToks from autistic creators as well. And I was like, immediately, no, I'm not. Like, surely not. Because it was a lot of people talking more about some of the stereotypical traits of autism. And I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't describe me at all. And people who've been diagnosed in childhood talking about it. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not me. That's not me. Why am I even seeing this? Like, I'm not even autistic. I just have sensory issues. Let me be. And then as I was scrolling more, I was starting to see more people who were describing my experience. And I was like, hang on a minute. Sometimes, like, I do this, or sometimes I feel this exact way. What do you mean? Like, people don't take things literally and mean the exact words they say. Why would they do that? And it was just like day after day, I was like, it might be autism. Maybe it's autism. And then in December of 2022, to be fair, in the autumn of 2022, actually, I had been just kind of feeling what I now understand to be autistic burnout. Didn't know this at the time. Every morning I would just wake up with overwhelming anxiety. I was having more and more shutdowns and having like verbal shutdowns as well and meltdowns. And I was just all over the place. And I just thought, oh, it's anxiety and depression. I'm familiar with those. And then there was a situation in my personal life that made me remember everything I'd like listened to in the videos that I had watched previously that I'd disregarded. And I was like, oh, shucks, maybe it's actually autism for real. And I kind of came to terms with it in that moment. And then I was like, I need to recontextualize my entire life. Like, I now no longer can see my whole life thus far without this lens. So I got in touch with a therapist through my job, and we were just walking through. She specializes in autism and in ADHD, as well as other neurodevelopmental conditions. And we sort of started having conversations. And then one day she said, shall we go through the DSM-5? And I was like, okay, this is make or break. This is make or break. As we were going through it, and she was going through each definition, having spent time with me, she was like, and this isn't an official diagnosis, but she basically said, in my professional opinion, you have autism and ADHD. And I was like, fair enough. I'll take it. Because it makes sense. And it's the only thing that had made sense all my life. And from there, I really just began to accept it. And every day as you scroll through the app, you know what it's like. You're just like, wait, that was autism too? That was ADHD? Well, would you look at that? And honestly, I think the discovery has changed my life for the better, I will say. I did have the season of rage where I was like, this is unfair. how many years have I been robbed of because I didn't know and no one thought to tell me? And then I think, well, your parents are told, like, look for anything different in your child, except it's genetic. So you're probably just like the parents that are being told to look out for anything different. And so I had to process a lot of things, a lot of social interactions where I was just like, that's why this went wrong. I didn't understand the particular social cue, or I didn't, oh, and every day for a few months, it was just like, oh, for ages. And now I'm at a point where it's like, I get it. And I'm very at peace with it. And I've been able to work on certain accommodations for myself that have made my life flow better. I'm extremely grateful for it. I think, honestly, finding out has genuinely saved my life and improved it for the better in the long run.
Thank you so much, girl. You see, I'm over here shaking my head nodding. I heavily relate. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your trajectory. You had a turn of phrase there that I really want to touch on. You said the season of rage. And I kind of want to go into that because I know I've experienced it, and a lot of people that I've connected with have experienced that time of just it's almost like re-traumatizing the trauma, because you have that initial trauma of growing up and even getting into adulthood and not really understanding who you were, but then going back and recontextualizing your whole life and deconstructing all of these past experiences. And then once you have the answer and you realize that it wasn't a personal failing or a moral failing, but rather a misunderstanding of who you are and your brain that caused all this trauma, it's almost like trauma on top of trauma. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you about that, because you have a lot of great insights, and I've seen a lot of your advice that is applicable to whether you're neurodivergent or not, just with dealing with anxiety and depression. And I wonder if that has been informed a lot by you going through the season of rage and coming out on the other side with answers.
Yeah. Thank you so much, first of all. And I definitely think that season of rage is not only necessary, it's inevitable. And I encourage anybody who is finding out about themselves, when the rage hits, let it through. The only way out of that is through. But I will say that, again, I went through so much, as I think a lot of us can relate to. Like, I went through so much as a child, as a teen, as an adult, like as a young adult. And I didn't understand why. And I had carried the story that I'm defective, like it's just something wrong with me. I'm just incapable of reaching my potential and all of those things, right? And then I realized that, hang on a minute. And a lot of people also told me these things about myself. You're unambitious, you don't have the drive, you're lazy. I hate that word so much. You're lazy, you're this, you're that, you're the third, you're too loud, you're not being loud enough in this scenario. And then I realized, oh, I'm ADHD. Like, I have autism and I have ADHD. Oh, okay. So it's my literal brain then. And it's all of a sudden, it's just like, not only was I not defective in the way that people like to see me as defective and like to describe me as defective, what I actually just needed was accommodation. How did I survive in such unaccommodating spaces? And then it's like, how on earth did I not see this? How on earth? And then, like, I got angry with my parents. I got angry with friends I was around who said I was too sensitive and who would, like, gather to talk about me privately and then, like, act a completely different way in front of me. And, like, I got angry at the social rules. And it's just like, for example, the fact that I was recalling so many conversations and so many issues that I'd gotten into because I say exactly what I mean. Because I think very literally, and so I communicate very literally. And the number of times words and feelings and emotions had been ascribed to me that I did not possess and was not interested in, and the number of times I was held to account for words that I didn't say and didn't mean, was infuriating. And I'd just come off the back of situations where I was dealing with those things. And so to realize it's actually just like, oh, we're picking my brain apart here. It's not a personality trait. Like, this is how my brain actually works, and you guys don't like it, but you claim to be my people. Evidently not. And so it was just, I had to re-piece my life together. But I am grateful that I went through that season, because it definitely made me more aware of the ways in which I can be misunderstood. And it helped me set boundaries for what I will and won't tolerate in terms of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is inevitable, but there is also a certain point where you realize someone is either unwilling or unable to hear you, and you don't have to stick around for that. Because I had felt like I was always the one in the wrong, I would always in the past like push to be understood and just be like, if I can come up with the perfect analogy, they'll get it. They won't if they don't want to. And after the anger, there was so much peace, because then I knew, okay, when I encounter this, I get to disengage. It's an incompatibility here. When I encounter this, I will lean in a number of times. And if I see that's not working, I will love from a distance. So the rage helped me get to a point of just peace with everything. But the rage was very, very much ragey.
That's so real. That is so real. And you bring up a great point about like getting to a point of peace, because autism acceptance isn't just about other people accepting us, but us accepting how our autistic brains work. And in that regard, you kind of have to compartmentalize relationships with people, because to your point, people will only understand you to the point that they're willing to understand you, or that they're capable of understanding you. And I know just personally, I'll share, it was really hard for me. I have very black or white thinking in certain regards, like I'm all or nothing. And so once I realized that I was giving my all and most other people that I was giving my all to weren't, that was another layer of trauma that was compounded onto understanding that the world at large was different, but then also the people in my inner circle weren't who I thought they were and didn't see me the way I thought they saw me. That definitely was something that I had, and I'm still processing to this day, trying to reconcile that. Wow, like everyone doesn't think like me. Everyone doesn't have the same values as me. Everyone doesn't take what you say at face value, and they're constantly ascribing this subtext to your actions and your words that just don't exist.
Yeah. And I think also with that subtext, what became very frightening for me was that in as much as someone is ascribing subtext to what I'm saying, there's also a subtext in what they're saying and I can't find it. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what they actually mean by what they're saying. I remember just getting so overwhelmed, because around the time I was coming to terms with all of this, I was also going through a situation with a prior, like some people that I had considered friends. And it was just like, what did you mean anytime you spoke to me? And now it was like, I don't know. I have no idea. And I don't know how to process this. And so has our whole relationship been a lie? I have no idea. And I think, like you said, it's a lot to process. I still find my brain going back to it now, because it's still an unsolved puzzle for me. And I just have to let it go for my own well-being. But it's so hard, because it's this big unanswered thing. And I love answers. And
you need to know the why behind the what, right?
Always. Otherwise my brain won't let it rest. And I'm just like, you have to let it rest now. There's no, that you're not going to get these answers unless you make them up. So just leave it be. They just weren't my people, type of thing.
Yeah, that is so hard to do. The not having the why behind the what, the rumination, the constant rumination. It helps in certain regards, like when you're going back and you're like reconstructing or deconstructing some past experiences to help you fill in the blanks as to why these social interactions went the way that they did. But on the flip side, when you can't get that closure, the loop just seems to continuously go until you have to just decide that, okay, the closure is that I just will never know, which is just so difficult when you have a logical brain and you need it to make sense in order for you to accept it. Even if you don't like it, you need it to actually make sense. And when a lot of things that people do, especially neurotypical people do, are illogical or they don't follow a pattern, it's like, what in the world?
Like, how do I reconcile this, basically?
Yeah, that's definitely a journey that I feel like will be a lifelong journey for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So since you are someone like me who was diagnosed in adulthood, I know you touched on a little bit earlier that the catalyst was kind of like the coming out of the pandemic and re-entering the world. And I highly relate to that as well, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit more, or for you to expand a little bit more on being out of practice when it comes to social interactions. And that brings us to like the topic of masking, right? Was that your beginning of understanding what masking is and that you had been masking once you had to re-enter society? It felt like you were out of practice.
So it felt like I was out of practice, yes, but I didn't make the connection right there and then, because for as long as I could remember, every social interaction always felt very manual. It felt like I had like a drop-down menu in my brain that I made up myself, and I needed to like select the right answer and then I'd say it. And I just thought, oh, I'm just out of practice of doing this thing that I've always been doing, and following the system that I had. So if I just keep doing social things, it will be fine. I also knew every time I've been out with people, you've got the mask face, right? Where like you kind of give yourself a bit of a muscular facelift and you go out there and you have a slight smile the whole time. And so I've always come home from things with a massive headache. So that wasn't new either. It wasn't until I think we came out of lockdown around in full in the UK around mid 2021. And it wouldn't be until the end of 2021 that I realized I had ADHD. And it wouldn't be until about a year later that I really came to terms with being autistic and then understanding masking and unmasking. But I actually started a journey of unmasking before I knew I was autistic, because I was like on a self-love journey. And I think it came from a point of just being tired and nothing having worked. Like I would bend over backwards and contort myself and borrow energy from future versions of myself to no avail, and it still wouldn't help my social dynamics, and I still wouldn't feel good about myself at the end of the day. So I was just like, I just need to do me. I need to discover who I am. I need to just live for myself. And I realized now that I was actually unmasking then. And then when I found out about unmasking, like late 2022, I was like, it's very funny that I've been doing this somewhat in terms of my social interactions before I knew what it was. And I think my body and my brain were just tired. And that was how I sort of ended up down that route. So I always say it's not lost on me that like my self-love journey led me to understanding my neurodivergence, and my neurodivergence has helped my self-love journey tremendously as well.
That's beautiful. I definitely relate to that. And I do feel like a lot of us who are more late diagnosed have had a similar trajectory where it's like, you know what, I'm tired of pretending, even if you don't have the language for it yet, right? Like if you don't know that it's specifically unmasking autism or just unmasking in general, you know that at some point you've hit a wall in trying to present yourself in a way that would be acceptable and digestible to the greater society. And so once you give up the need, the trauma drive of performing for others, and you start to focus on getting in touch with who you are authentically, that is such a huge gateway to figuring out what exactly is going on beneath the surface, the why behind the what. That's my biggest thing. I always love saying that, the why behind the what. If you can give me the why behind the what, I don't want to say I don't care, but like I won't have such a hard time with what it is if I can understand why. And that's why understanding that you're autistic, when you are autistic, doesn't seem like a death sentence. In fact, it feels like a rebirth.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love that. It feels like a rebirth. Like it's so funny. I look back on like my past and I'm just like, wow, it feels like a different lifetime. Between then and now, like I'm just like, I feel like I'm living a completely different life, and I feel like I have so much more energy for myself now because I know how to accommodate. But it's so vastly different the way I saw things then and the way that I see things and understand life now as a result of just that one seemingly small nugget of information.
Yeah, it's one data point, but it's a data point that unlocks a totally different perspective that you're able to view everything through. And for me, I mean, I feel like it like I said before, it's like a rebirth, because like I felt like I was kind of just on autopilot. And once that autopilot, like I hit burnout in late summer, early autumn of 2022 as well. And I had to go on FMLA, which is family medical leave here in the US, where you can get like up to 12 weeks off from work for anything. Basically, like if you're stressed out, if you're depressed, whatever, you don't have to have like a medical diagnosis. So I'm self-diagnosed. I'm clinically diagnosed ADHD, but I have not had the full assessment for autism yet. Although my clinical assessor for ADHD referred me to a neuropsych. She was like, I think you should follow up with a neuropsychologist for an autism assessment, and her daughter is autistic. So I'm picking up what she's putting down on that. But anyway, like, I say all that to say, like, I think hitting that wall, although it is terrifying when you're going through that, if you can make it out on the other side, it is like a breath, like you're taking your first breath. Like, oh my goodness, I can breathe. I have the answers. I'm not this alien. And once you get past the season of rage, like we were talking about, it actually gives me more compassion. I don't know about you, but it gives me more compassion for neurotypical people, as well as the people in my life who missed the signs that are now obvious signs of ADHD and autism, because a lot of them, especially in my family, like you said earlier, it's normal. So like I wasn't seen as being so crazy because they didn't recognize it either.
Yeah. There's a sense of peace that comes with it after. It's once the storm passes, it really does pass, like at least internally. I think it's so interesting as well, because with family dynamics, I'm looking at my entire family, I'm like, oh, I see you all. I see every single one of you. I sent my little brother the RADS-R test, and he was like, I took it, but I don't understand or like how any of these questions were phrased. I was like, you don't, do you? None of us do. We all hate it. Welcome. Also, you passed. But yeah, it's just like, I look at like everyone so differently. And that feeling of having run on autopilot for so long, I can relate to that so hard, because for so long I was like doing all of the things because those were the things that I was told I was supposed to do, without any consideration for who I actually am and what I actually want. Even things that like I'm supposed to want in the future. Like I've been recently looking over those elements of my life and thinking, do I want this for me, or do I want this because it's what I was told I was supposed to want, like for so long? But yeah, it gives you so much to unpack, but you get to see people differently, and you get to see people for a more compassionate lens. I feel like the compassion that we then have for ourselves spills out into what we have for other people. I think that's beautiful as well.
Absolutely, because we understand the nuances now in who people are. We see people as individuals, which is something that I really wish that we could continue to share and open those eyes to like people outside of the autistic community. Because one thing that I don't like is that a lot of the things that get projected onto us are actually true of neurotypicals, like black and white thinking, right? Like, yes, sometimes we can have all or nothing thinking, but it's not necessarily black or white. Whereas you'll see on the neurotypical side, they like to make snap assumptions and put you in a box and keep you there. And they usually lack the nuance of seeing, okay, well, this person is an individual and this is how things look for them, not just how I assumed and this box that I put them in, which is another reason why I feel like as a high masking woman, especially a woman of color who has been a high performer, a people pleaser, and had this like fawning response for all my life, that once I came out as autistic to people, they straight up rejected it and invalidated it, because they were like, well, you're smart, you're this, you're talented, you're X, Y, and Z, you can't do this. And it's like, who's the one with the black and white thinking here?
Make it make sense, friends. Make it make sense. It's so funny, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. We might be all or nothing, and we might even be black on white, but because we're so literal and so specific, we are black and white on a lot of individual things. So we actually have the capacity for nuance and the capacity for shades of gray. Like, someone will make a statement and we immediately understand it's not a blanket statement, because what about this variable and what about that variable? And we're black and white on all of those individual statements, but together it makes like so much capacity for the gray, because we can put all of those different blacks and whites together and come to a more holistic conclusion. Whereas I think that oftentimes my experience with neurotypical individuals is they're very much if this, then that. And that's it. And we're very much like, if this, perhaps that. But have you considered this other thing? And this other thing? We can't come to a conclusion that because of this, because there's so much else to consider. So we might be black and white, but we are black and white on so many different things. And we don't do those broad sweeping things as much because it doesn't make sense to. It just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And when you bring that up, that actually takes me back to what you were talking about, your brother's reaction to the Radzard. It's like, you can tell that those kinds of assessments were created by holistic neurotypical people, because they are not yes or no questions. There's so much nuance. Like, do you like socializing? I need you to give me more context there, because in certain contexts, yes, I do like socializing, but I don't like socializing at all times. It's not a black or white answer. And so
exactly,
I feel like that also trips some people up too, because being a literal thinker, when I was first on my journey, I would read some of these questions and I was like, well, no, that doesn't apply to me. But then when I applied just a little bit of nuance to it, I'm like, oh, actually, it does. Like repetitive behaviors, right? Like, I took that very literally. I was like, I don't do anything like repetitive. But then I had to think about it. I was like, oh, but actually, I do. I have to have this kind of coffee drink every morning when I'm going to work. And if I don't, then I don't have a really good morning. It's like, it throws off. But I didn't think of it as a repetitive. I thought like, oh, I sit here and I do this, or, and because it's framed that way, sometimes it trips people up and we kind of gaslight ourselves out of understanding that is applicable to us.
Yeah, it's so funny. That whole question, there's one question of, did you line things up as a child? And I was like, I didn't do that. What was I lining up? And then I realized, no, I used to put my teddy bears in high order. I didn't see it as just lining them up though. I was putting them in high order. Yes, a line was formed, but that wasn't my intention. And there's so many things, like, again, like a lot of the like criteria and the questions we take really literally as well, which is how the diagnostic criteria were not written for us. Like, they're not talking to us, because how are you, like, for example, eye contact. I was a few years old when I realized that apparently they don't mean like actual staring into the back of someone's retina. I feel, even as I think about it now, I feel so hoodwinked, because I'm just like, so why? If it's not eye contact, if that's not eye contact, call it what it is, please. We're begging you. And so many different things are very, again, broad sweeping statements that we take as literal individual things. And so we think, oh yeah, I don't do that. You do. You just don't think you do, because it's worded in a way that doesn't accommodate for you, the person who is about to be diagnosed by these criteria. So yeah, it's very interesting. And the gaslighting yourself out of it as well is hard relates, because I remember just being like, no, I don't do any of these things. I can't be autistic, but certain elements of how I process the world seem in line with this, but I can't appropriate this term because I didn't line my toys up as a child, except apparently I did. So yeah, there's so much that it's like, oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that the intersectionality plays a role too as well, because autism presents completely differently in women than it does for men, in people of color than it does to white people. And we know that autism has historically been only studied in young white boys. And when you are the exact opposite, when you are an adult Black woman, it's like, I don't see myself in the representation of how autism is presented either in a diagnostic scale or even how it's presented societally, like in media.
Exactly.
I was having a conversation recently that I would love to get your opinion on this about the need to change the face of autism. That's what I kind of use as my phrase, is the face of autism, because that's another reason why a lot of people, even if they are trained clinically in diagnosing, or they're a doctor or whether they're psychologists, whatever, why they don't see autism when they see us and they see a whole host of behavioral or mood disorders, is because the immediate assumption is Sheldon Cooper or the guy from The Good Doctor or Rain Man. Like, you're either severely you have very high needs, or you're a savant and you're white and you're male. And it's like, come on now, see us and see us holistically.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I think that there needs to be more representation and acknowledgement of the fact that autism doesn't have a look. Autism does not have a look. It is not a phenotype. It does not have a look. Like, it is as many of us as exist is what autism looks like. It doesn't have a singular look, and it's exhausting sometimes trying to battle against the "you don't look autistic." Talk me through what that looks like, friend.
Yeah.
Like, and it's battling against that, but again, it's because even in like media, we're not represented like as broadly as we ought to be. There are, I would imagine, like autistic individuals in every profession. There has to be. Like, do you know what I mean? We exist, but we're not shown and we're not studied, and none of the data really represents us, even down to the point where I remember seeing a video of a woman, and she was talking about how she went to her doctor because she's going through menopause, and I think she was diagnosed with autism as well, and she wanted to understand if there was a link between the change in her hormones and autism, and why she might be being affected worse. And she was told flatly there's no established link between hormones, between female reproductive hormones and autism. Yeah, because you studied small white boys. There's not.
Thank you.
There's not going to be a link. There just isn't going to be a link when all of the cases are small white boys and that's all you're studying. And so it can be really, really hard, because that's all that's seen as autism is the young white boy who grows into the older white boy who's autistic. And typically often what's represented is the genius type as well. And that's seen as the positive side. But then with the genius type comes like some of the like sensory processing issues or sensory aversions and things like that. And none of that necessarily gets represented very well in any case. And the face of autism needs to be way more diverse and way more inclusive, because it gets exhausting trying to almost not prove that you're autistic. I have nothing to prove, but it's also like, when I tell you I have autism, I have no reason to like make this up.
Right. Oh,
that's
my goodness.
just silly.
Thank you for saying that. Because of the rise of people being open about talking about their autism, especially on TikTok, I feel like there's a lot of invalidation, especially when it comes to those of us who are self-diagnosed. And the neurotypical lens of, you just want to be seen, you just want clout. Like, I'm sorry, do you know, like, this is not some cute little thing that I'm doing just to make content. This completely affects my brain, my social interactions, and how I see and view the world, and can communicate with other people that have greatly affected me and caused me a lot of trauma. And you sit here and think that I'm just doing this for likes and views? Like, just because you pretend all day.
Let's talk about it. Because I was going to be like, you, as a neurotypical, it's like, ask yourself in your day-to-day life if you've ever pretended to be autistic for real, and posted about it and stuff. And how long you would last pretending to be an individual who has autism. You wouldn't. Because it governs everything I do and everything I think and how I process the world and how I interact with it. I have no incentive to make up the fact that you say something to me and I don't process it till 3 seconds later. And then I've asked you what? And then I've been like answering the question and you've gotten annoyed. There is no incentive to make that up. I'm sorry. Like, and it's frustrating because a lot of us have finally found the term that explains so much of our experience, so much of what we've been through, so much of the trauma that we endured. And then a neurotypical sits there and goes, you don't look autistic and you're making this up for clout. Why?
Yeah.
Why would I do that? What part of this looks fun to you?
It's so crazy to me because throughout this process of deconstructing, I've learned more about myself, but I've also learned more about how neurotypicals work, right? And for background, I worked in a very neurotypical, typical corporate, like, even though it's corporate America, I'm sure it's quite similar culturally with the corporate structure over there in the UK, where it's like a lot of older white people and there's respectability politics and there's the shoulds of how you should behave and things like that, right? And so because of that, I realized the pattern in them is that they all, or I don't want to say they all, but the overall vibe that I'm getting is that everybody wants to be seen. They want to be known. They want to get themselves, to a level to where they have clout. But they do that by sticking to a very rigid set of rules and social rules. So it's like, well, I'm doing this because if I do this, then I'll eventually get here. And so that's why they see us, or they project onto us like, no, I don't believe that. You're just trying to be different so that you can be seen, as opposed to realizing like, no, we are literally divergent, which is why we're not going to fit into this like narrow box that you're forcing yourself to fit into so that you can potentially get to, some kind of visibility. And so because our differences are unique, authentic expressions of our differences, in some of our cases are getting us seen and are getting us platforms, they are assuming through their lens, well, you're only doing that so that you can be different, because nobody wants to be different and you're doing this to put on a show. And that can be very frustrating to have to try to justify your existence or justify who you are, because like you said, I don't need to explain myself to you necessarily, but if you don't believe me, there's real material harm that can come to my life and my livelihood, like not being believed by doctors, not being believed by your employer because you don't perform things the certain way that they expect you to.
Exactly. And that part of not being believed, and the way that our brains work, not being understood and being viewed through a neurotypical lens is genuinely dangerous and is so harmful. I think it is just so harmful, and there definitely needs to be change in understanding of the fact that neurodivergent humans exist. Get with the program is 2023. And also the way that we process things and interact with the world is different, and ways to potentially spot that and accommodate it just need to be wider spread. Because now I look at like even school rules, stop fidgeting. You're talking too much. This, that, and that, it's just like, I was literally regulating my nervous system, but go off, sis. It's hard. Like looking back, I'm just like, I was told, even by my parents, they told me you talk too much. I was hyperverbal. I was always like singing and dancing, and I understand that now to have been me stimming and just regulating my nervous system, and that was frowned upon. It's just like the idea that neurotypicality is the only form of neurotype that exists is so dangerous and needs to be like changed and reformed ASAP, because we stand to lose so much and come to so much harm as long as that understanding is in place, even on a social level, without there being any financial consequence. And there is so much oftentimes. On a social level, we stand to lose that social safety and that ability to integrate within society for as long as people see our traits as like personality flaws. And then we come to employment and the idea that, you should be able to basically burn the candle at both ends because I can, says neurotypical boss. And I'm just like, I cannot afford to do that. I will take weeks to recover. And that being seen as like, oh, you're just not a team player, or you're just not a hard worker. I'm working exceptionally hard every day, and then you keep calling me out of my hard work to do small talk, which feels like improv to me.
Yes.
Like, it's all of those things. And it's this idea that we are to perform all of these social rules and norms that inherently have in my eyes, a lot of them have not all that much value, but we have to perform them to stay safe. And the moment we don't have the energy to perform them or decide against performing them, we're considered bad people. That needs to go.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Whenever, like, I actually made a post about this not too long ago. Whenever you hear that term, oh, just be yourself, they're not literally meaning be yourself. They mean come across as natural when you are performing the societally or culturally acceptable personality. Yep. And that takes so much brain power for an autistic person, like allistic. And I think that allistic people don't realize how much brain power it takes for them as well, because going back to deconstructing, understanding more about myself helped me understand more about them. A lot of these social norms, like you said, not having much logical sense creates a sense of anxiety in even neurotypical people, because if you have someone who's higher in the hierarchy who gives you a very vague command, and then you don't, because of your place in the hierarchy, you can't ask them a clarifying question, because asking why is somehow seen as you being insubordinate. Now you're sat there, you're left with this sense of anxiety and rumination, like, what could they have meant? Did they mean that I want this? But instead of asking that, like maybe a neurodivergent person would, you just sit there and internalize that anxiety, and now it's overspilling into other areas of your life. I don't feel like they realize that, because to them it's normal, and going back to them having black and white thinking, well, if they said this, then I should just do this. And they're more, I feel like they're more disconnected from themselves than we are. And I think that's why we're seen as so much of a threat, because we're authentic and we don't allow societal pressures to keep us from expressing ourselves authentically and getting to the truth.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I think that even like within workplaces as well, I only recently realized that you're not supposed to ask clarifying questions. I've been doing it this whole time. I'm just like, well, I got the answers I needed and I got the task done, so we can't be that mad at me. But like, it's so many sometimes contradicting social rules that exist in spaces. And I think that on some level, everybody is doing the performance. I think that neurotypical individuals have the instructions kind of downloaded a lot quicker for that performance, and they have the script, but it's still a performance, and they still go home tired, and they still go home and they still come away from those conversations with vague commands, with questions, because the command doesn't make sense. But they understand that they're not supposed to ask. And then when they're asked to redo the thing because they didn't do the thing right the first time, they understand that that's just how things work. And it's not even that I refuse to accept that that's how things work. I just didn't realize that was how things work. And now that I do realize, now I refuse to accept it, because I'm just like, you want this thing done, you're going to tell me how to do it, because there's so many ways to do it. And I'm sure you only meant the one way. So let's work together on this, because that's what makes sense to me. The goal is the task. We want it done correctly. Let's do this in as few takes as possible. But I think that I don't think they're necessarily, I think for the love of, not for the love of, but conformity is seen as a means of survival. Mm-hmm. So for them, it makes sense to just conform. For us, we've realized we have not been conforming this entire time. We're going to get the stuff done. Do you know what I mean? We've not been conforming, especially, and once we start unmasking and once we start realizing who we are, we're then just like, well, I already don't fit. You guys already told me, like, I'm just going to do me. And that, I think, is very scary for people who have been told that your worth is dependent on your ability to perform in this way. And you're a failure if you don't perform in this way. And they watch us not perform in this way and also be very sure about ourselves. You question everything. unless you don't, at which point you make the neurodivergent person look like the bad guy, because that's the only way you can feel good about the fact that you are doing the performance, sometimes unwillingly. And sometimes without understanding why you're doing it. Like small talk. I'm sorry, I'm tired of that stuff. I hate it so much. And I found out that the reason why small talk is done is it's a means of acknowledging each other. We said hi.
Right.
Why are we still talking, and why is it small? Make it bigger, please. You know? And so many social rules that are arbitrary, like eye contact is a sign of respect. Said who?
Exactly.
Said who?
All of those things are, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was like, all of those things are just like, they're tools of the hierarchy, because you can force someone to look you in the eye if you are above them or senior to them in the organization, or your position in society is deemed to be greater. And so if I want you to look at me, I'm going to make you look at me. It doesn't mean that you're actually understanding my communication with you any better. You just have the power to make me look at you, or you need to feel validated by me looking at you. It doesn't really serve any purpose. If we're verbally communicating effectively, we don't even have to be looking at each other. Like, how do you talk to people over the phone? Like, eye contact is not 100% necessary in order to do that. Or even like you were talking about small talk. Small talk is another thing that people use to suss you out and to just like, put you in a certain place in the hierarchy. And so if you don't participate in that small talk, you're going to be ascribed as being rude, standoffish, arrogant, even if the person above you wants you to talk to them or acknowledge them in that way. Mm-hmm. But for me, and for a lot of people that I'm speaking with who are autistic, we have a need for profundity. We need the words, we need the conversation to actually be deep, or at the very least serve a purpose. Like if I'm in the workplace and you want to come up to me and talk to me about something and it's work related, sure, we can chat about that because it has a purpose. But don't come up to me and be like, hey, what you do this weekend? And what are you planning to do? Like, I don't care. And I don't care if that sounds arrogant or like I'm standoffish, but like, I don't care about what you do in your everyday life, especially when it has nothing to do with the task at hand.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I love me a deep conversation. I require depth. I require there to be more than just surface. And what I'm realizing, even as you were speaking, it was sort of coming to my mind that actually all of those conversations take time and energy. However deep or shallow they are, especially for us, where we have to engage our brains fully to be able to have those conversations. Whether it's about the weather or about something meaningful and useful or about something that matters to us, it takes time and it takes energy. And I'm realizing we value time and energy so much. So when we're then pulled into a conversation that requires time and energy and is about the weather, I don't mean to sound arrogant, and I don't mind if I do. I don't care about the weather unless it's raining and I need my umbrella so my hair doesn't get wet. That's my only concern. My concern about the weather ended when I left my house and I had all the stuff I needed. I don't care about it anymore. The situation in which I know you is a work situation. What you did over the weekend it shouldn't have been my business, nor should it have been my problem. And then it's sometimes being asked a small talk question and answering in the scripted small talk way. How are you doing? Fine. How about you? And then they go into this long spiel. And it's like, so it's a problem when I do it. The way you do it is fine. Because I know if I were to go into a long spiel, it'd be like, okay. Right, okay. Yeah, I remember someone actually telling me, this was like an old friend, they said to me, and I think it was a backhanded compliment in retrospect, but they were like, I love how you just make everything so deep and so serious. And I was just like, I took it as a compliment. I think that's a great thing.
Yes.
I think it's fantastic. But in retrospect, I'm like, hang on a minute.
You didn't actually like that.
Do you mean... You didn't? No, you didn't. And does that also tell me that you prefer to keep things surface? Because if so, I can't. It takes the same amount of brain power. In fact, it takes more brain power because I don't value it. So it takes a lot for me to then come out of my way to do it. Whereas like, talk to me about like a special interest. That flows. I could do this all day. But yeah, like because we value time and energy, and I think part of that comes from knowing how variable our energy levels can be. Things that take time that we don't value, we do tend to reject, even if we don't realize it. So that's why I think that when it comes to small talk, we all just have a similar like disdain for it, because it's just like, this is time and energy that I could have spent doing anything else.
Absolutely. Like, oh my goodness. I love that you brought that up. Us understanding and knowing that our energy fluctuates. Because I think that, again, because going back to the black and white thinking of neurotypical people, they take that as like, oh, you're bipolar because the other day you were super chatty and then like today you like just want to be left alone. And it's like, again, you're not looking at the nuances. I'm a person. I can't put on the same performance every single day to the detriment of myself, maybe in the ways that you can. And I think, and this is my theory, and I don't know if this has been purported by other people, I don't want to take their ideas, but I haven't seen it yet, is that, you know, the fact that autistic people, I think, are hypersensitivity and sensory issues, quote unquote, also boil over into us just being hypersensitive and hyper aware of everything, not just like little sensory issues, but hyper aware of like the nuances with things. Whereas, and so it doesn't translate over to a neurotypical brain where they don't have as many connections. They don't have as many synapses. Yeah. And so it can be that simple for them. One of the most triggering phrases to me and the one phrase that'll make me shut down in a conversation with someone is, it's not that deep.
It is. I'm sorry.
It is. It's always that deep. Exactly. And whenever I hear that, and I get that a lot from my brother, which like makes me like not want to talk to him sometimes. He's like, it ain't even that deep. You taking it too far. I'm like, no, you haven't taken it far enough, which is why you're rejecting anything that I'm saying right now, because your cognitive dissonance has got you in a chokehold. And I'm just trying to tell you that you need to think one layer deeper so that you can realize that this is not the end all be all.
Yeah. Also, on top of that, you're overthinking it. My friend, you've not thought it the right amount. You've not thought it enough. Because sometimes the stuff I'll come out with, I'll be very much like, I've had conversations with people and they're like, I feel like you're overthinking it. And I'm like, I can tell when I'm overthinking because I also additionally get anxious and I feel fine. I know that I'm not overthinking it. I'm thinking about it at a deeper level. Yes. Don't tell me I'm overthinking something just because you've not thought it this much. Yeah, that's a you issue. I'm thinking just fine. But yeah, being told that, it's not that deep, but it is. And also I need it to be. And if you can't accept that it is, then where to from here? Because but like keeping everything surface and shallow and not understanding like the other layer of things that dictates this seemingly surface layer, that stresses me out when people do that. And also what you were saying about like our hypersensitivity and leading us to be like also very like aware of like the little differences and subtle nuances. That's also why we are incredible when it comes to pattern recognition. Mm-hmm. That's what we are basically playing spot the difference all the time. And also, I wonder if some of the trauma that a lot of us have gone through as kids and growing up has also made us very hyper aware and hypersensitive. And also our pattern recognition has helped us to develop that hyper awareness through those like difficult situations. But yeah, like sometimes, like not even sometimes, majority of the time it is that deep. They've just not seen it yet.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
I'm glad you brought up pattern recognition. I like to call it spiderweb thinking, because, you know, it may seem like these different lines that on the surface, of course, so I'll take a step back. I get triggered also when people say that, that's a conspiracy theory or blah, 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 because they can't see how on the surface these things look very different. But again, you peel back one layer, you see that there's a connecting motivation between the two. And when you try to explain that to someone who doesn't have systems-based thinking or who doesn't have good pattern recognition, you seem like a crackpot, because you're like, well, no, well, just because this person did this and this person did this, you can tell it's because of the same thing. They're like, you're just making that up. You're guessing. You're thinking too hard. You're X, Y, and Z. And it's so dismissive. And it almost makes you feel like you are crazy. Like, they're good at gaslighting you and being like, well, I don't see it that way. So I think you're crazy. And it's like, I need for us to just think, just turn our thinking caps back one layer, please.
Please, like, just a little harder. You can do it. I believe in you. But like, honestly, the gaslighting as well. Oh, the gaslighting. That's what gets me as well, because it's one thing to not see it, and then it's another thing to insist that I'm crazy for seeing it. Like, there were, like, even in like interpersonal dynamics, there's been things, and this is another thing, I'm hyperverbal, I'm a verbal processor. This thing has landed me in so much trouble, because I would say certain things. So not only would other words and other things be ascribed to it, but I would also be labeled as crazy and doing too much and unhinged. Like, in actual quotes, for spotting things based on rather minuscule behaviors that seems to be quite broad-reaching statements. And I would be like, there was one time I said, I don't trust this person. And obviously this became, oh, you're attacking the character. Da, 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 da. I wasn't. I was just saying, I personally don't feel psychologically safe in this space for these particular reasons. But it would, like, you get gaslit so hard for making observations like that. And then when you see them play out, and it's like, I was right. I was 100% right. And I've had to learn to not allow myself to be gaslit so hard, because I used to, again, because as a child, I was told, like, it's not that serious. The lights aren't too bright. It's not too loud. You need to do this. You need to basically ignore yourself in order to keep everybody else happy. You can only get your own needs met by keeping everybody else happy and ignoring yourself in the process. I was so used to being like, yeah, no, maybe I am wrong, except I never was. And then it was heartbreaking realizing that I never was. And so of late, I've just been like, one thing about me, I can trust the patterns that I've observed unwaveringly. And I'm not about to F around and find out anymore. I'm going to listen to what those patterns are saying and move accordingly, because the amount of gaslighting I endured, even internally, like, I would feel that a vibe was off, and I'd be like, oh no, maybe it's just your own insecurities, except I knew I'd been working through that stuff. And I knew I'd done a lot of work through that stuff, and I didn't feel insecure in every area, because typically with an insecurity, that's quite broad sweeping. It was just with a specific individual. And I would gaslight myself in the same ways that they had gaslit me and other people had done so, only to be proven, only to have what I feared be exactly right. So it always is that deep. Even the minuscule stuff is that deep. And like, I've had people say, oh, you tend to walk away from things on the back of minor things. And I'm like, no, this one thing is indicative of a particular pattern of behavior. I'm not about to stick around for it. And everyone's like, oh, you're doing too much. You're thinking about it too much. And anytime I've stuck around, I've been like, I knew I should have walked away the moment my gut said I should have. So I'm no longer staying around to be gaslit out of it anymore. Call me whatever you want. I can't. I won't sacrifice myself to prove a point.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I'm so glad you brought that up. Gaslighting has been both external and internal gaslighting.
Yeah.
Continues to get so many of us put into dangerous situations, unsafe situations. When you were talking, it actually reminded me of a situation I got back into, and I was seeing this guy back in October, right? I had all of these internal red flags that were like popping up, but then I kept saying, well, you know what, Tiara, you need to try something different. Try something new. I let the external voice quash my internal voice, and I regretted it in the end. And I was like, I should have just listened to my gut. Like, he was showing me who he was from the beginning, but I was allowing the external pressure of, Tiara, you don't give people a chance. You have such high standards. You this, that, and the other. You need to give people a chance, da, 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 da. And I let that voice override the internal voice inside of me that was like, this guy is like actually a piece of shit. you don't deserve to be around. Like, he wasn't overt. It wasn't like he treated me overtly bad, but because of the patterns of behavior that you can recognize in people who have narcissistic tendencies, I knew internally that this guy was not actually anything great. But, and again, I gave him time, and I deeply, deeply regret it to this day. And that's a perfect example. I mean, like, and luckily I wasn't, I walked out of that relatively unscathed. But when you take that same kind of scenario with people who don't understand that it is both external and internal gaslighting possible, that's when you get people who end up in these long-term abusive relationships, or they end up in unsafe situations. They get taken for their money, and then we get called naive, when in fact, it's a combination of us not being intrinsically aware of social cues, being continuously gaslit. And you combine those two together. No, we're not naive. We're just trying to fight through so many layers of trauma that you people with nefarious intentions have been able to get over on us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so many different layers. It's, on the one hand, we already struggle with the social cues as is, because a lot of them don't make sense. And we are people that need things to make sense. Like you said, the why behind the what. There often isn't a why, there's just a what, and there's a because. And then there's the fact that even when our internal alarm bells are ringing like crazy, we've been taught and basically systematically silenced. We've been told that, like, your gut reaction is wrong. If you act on it, you're a crazy person, so don't do that. And so then there's our tendency to take everything at face value. And when you get through the fact that we struggle with the social cues, and we've been silenced, it's the face value that's left. And so we take people at their word, and then it's so dangerous. It is so dangerous. And I truly believe that, like, the tendency to take people at their word and the pattern recognition and that internal guidance system were meant to go like hand in hand. Like, take people at their word and also be able to judge if they're lying. Where one of those has been silenced and it's the wrong one, in terms of being in the pattern recognition, we are like, we find ourselves landing in tough, dangerous situations that can lead us to so much harm. And that's why, like, of late, I've had to become very, very big on building trust back with myself. And there was a period of time where I just had to let my nervous system run the show. It was, and I'm still kind of there to somewhat. It's like, if my nervous system says no, it's a no. I don't care what anybody says at this point, because we have some repair to do. We have trust issues right now. And so I was very much like, I'm a content creator, and I'm doing that now because I basically, during my burnout season, I gave up on everything. I had to, because I couldn't do anything. And I realized the reason I was doing so much was because of external voices, and none of it was coming from me. So I stopped doing everything. And the reason I do content now is because it was calling my name in that season, in that period of time, like afterwards, and then it started to feel good. But if my nervous system says no, it's a no. I don't care how shiny it looks. I don't care how logically suitable it is. If my nervous system rejects it, I'm not doing it, because there has never been a time where my nervous system said no. I did it anyway. And I was like, yeah, that was great. I'm so glad I did that. Either in the short term or the long run, I regret it every single time. And I don't have the energy to go through that regret cycle anymore, because that is emotionally and energetically expensive. I don't have it. But I've had to learn to stop gaslighting myself, because oftentimes I can pinpoint the moment where I gaslit myself as well. And because I don't know, I tend to be very metacognitive. I think about what I think about. And so I've had to be very much like, each point where you decided that what your nervous system was saying to you was just false, or was just you being insecure, look where it got you, even if it's just a social consequence. And also, even in a situation where I might be having a trauma response, I've decided that I deserve to feel safe. Whatever reason my internal guidance system is being like, absolutely not, whether it is something I need to work through or it's something that is objectively externally wrong, I deserve to feel safe. I don't deserve to constantly be in fight or flight. And so many of us have just constantly been in fight or flight for years. And it's only over the past like 6-7 months that I've come to know what peace actually feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, now that I'm there, I could never go back to being that on edge all the time. And anyone that I trust now is as a result of me trusting myself. Anybody that I don't trust now is as a result of me trusting myself. And I don't care what it looks like. I will not accept any labels of being a bad person for not trusting people, because I know I'm trusting them with some sort of foundation. I might not have a wealth of data that says I should, that like external data that says I shouldn't trust this person. My nervous system said, no, that's enough for me.
Absolutely. And I wanted to follow up on that. Do you think that our tendency to be logical thinkers also keeps us sometimes from listening to our inner guidance? Because like you said, you may not be able to logically work out why you have this gut reaction. And so I think that, personally, I don't know if you feel the same way, that leads to us internally gaslighting ourselves, because if we can't make it make logical sense, it's like, well, no, I'm just going to ignore this signal that my body is screaming at me.
Yeah. And I think it's so many things. I think our tendency to lean into logic definitely is what lands us in hot water, because we oftentimes don't have like, massive heaps of data that say wrong path. And so our logical system says, well, this makes sense thus far. I shall continue down this road. But also, I think that we get so used to being in fight or flight, especially if we're unaccommodated, and we're constantly in situations that put us in fight or flight, and like constantly having to remember social rules for the hourly improv session that you're about to do it's genuinely nerve-wracking. You're about to I think that honestly showing up in society, it actually feels like improv. And so we get socially anxious all the time. We get anxious about interacting with particular individuals. We get anxious about showing up at work. We get anxious about just being. And so when our internal system is going, is screaming at us, it feels the same. So we're just anxious again. So all we have to lean on is logic, because we're constantly in some sort of psychological danger. And so it doesn't feel different than when we're showing up at work and when we're showing up with these people that we kind of feel off about, and when we're actually in imminent danger, because it all sounds the same. And that's why that's why the priority for me was I have to understand what peace feels like and a regulated nervous system feels like. And I have to accommodate myself, and I have to do all of these things because I'm anxious all the time. And I actually didn't know that it would lead to me being able to trust my gut more. I just thought, I'm tired of this anxiety. But what it's actually done is it's given me a baseline to work with. So when I do feel anxious suddenly, I'm able to be where was I when that feeling started? Who was around? What was going on? Because before it was just all the time. So there was no baseline of peace to go off. But now it's and so it was only logic that I could use back then. But now it's I can lean on logic if I need extra data. But actually my nervous system is disrupted. It's not always like this. Let's have a look at this.
That's awesome. And do you have any kind of advice for people who are in that stage of being you know what, I need to reconnect with who I am? Because dissociation is something that comes with the trauma of constantly being gaslit out of feeling that your emotions are valid, and you have to suppress yourself to make other people happy. So do you have any kind of advice for people who are just starting out and they need to be able to start to realize the difference between what is generalized anxiety and what is their nervous system letting them know that you are dysregulated and you are not really safe right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, when I started this journey, I was doing I don't know how this works for everybody else, but I was doing a lot of breath work just to work on the actual feeling of getting my nervous system regulated. So I used Wim Hof a lot, that video. I do like it. But there's quicker and easier ways. First of all, breathe all the way out. Because what I find with us is that as much, and I don't know whether this is the same for neurotypical people as well, but as much as our nervous system and our mental well-being affects us somatically, what we're doing in our physical body also affects our nervous system. My first thing is breathe all the way out, because you are probably stuck on an inhale. I can guarantee it. If you're feeling anxious, breathe out. That will help somewhat. And if you really need to regulate your nervous system, then do some additional breath work, whether that be square breathing or Wim Hof method, if that works for you, because I know that doesn't always work for everybody. Additionally, each time you find yourself spiraling or feeling anxious, if you're alone, figure out what you were thinking about, because there's something there. If you're with people, figure out who you're around. It might not be that these people make you anxious. It might be the space you're in that doesn't accommodate your sensory needs. And rather than judging yourself and being like, I shouldn't be feeling that way, reframe that and say, if you weren't supposed to be feeling that way, you wouldn't be. Mm. Clearly, your body and your nervous system are trying to tell you something. Start with this makes sense and work backwards, because it does. We don't go into an anxious state from being peaceful for no reason. Because of how ghastly we've been, we believe that it's just us being irrational. Your body and your nervous system have bypassed your brain, noticed danger, and just said, okay, we need to tense up. We're in fight or flight now. There is something there. Also, make sure you've eaten. For some reason, when I've not eaten, I get really anxious. So also just make sure that you're at homeostasis, like in general. But rather than judging the state that you're in, ask it why. You might not necessarily feel that it's telling you much. And you might feel that one time you ask it why, and it's just like, you don't feel safe with these people. Or every time you walk into this space, this is what happens. But start allowing yourself to observe the patterns rather than looking at the overall result and being like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like this. You should be, otherwise you wouldn't be.
That's so great. I love that, because I always say you shouldn't should on yourself. So whenever I hear that, for me, that's the biggest indicator for me that what I'm feeling is an external pressure as opposed to my internal guidance. Is like, oh, well, you shouldn't do that, or you should do that. Or, if it's not a must, like I must do this, then I know that it's more so this external pressure. And that's what I've kind of been using whenever I have those internal fights, because I still go through it where it's like I'll get a gut reaction, but then my ego will kick in and it'll be like, but no, I want to do this, or you should be doing this. And whenever I find myself in that internal battle, I'm like, the side that keeps telling me that I should or shouldn't be doing something is the side I'm about to ignore, because it's not, it's only fighting what I'm thinking, because it's this like trained or this conditioned part of me that's like, well, ignore your body, ignore who you are to appease these external pressures. And I'm like, especially when I'm alone, who else am I listening to? This is a battle between my higher self and my ego.
Exactly. Like, honestly, that should. I hate the word so much, because I often say to people, there is nothing that you should or shouldn't do that isn't already on autopilot. You probably should look into breathing. You do it automatically. You don't have to think about that. You need to blink. You do that automatically. You need to eat. You feel the cues. You start eating, although sometimes it's anxiety that tells me that I need to eat. But still, anyway, it's like all of those things that we absolutely have to do are covered. If there is very few things that you absolutely need to do. And it's about whether, okay, for example, I should show up to work. And the reason I will show up to work is because I want to get paid. I value that, right? But in terms of again, as a content creator, I should be filming right now. If I was willing and able, I'd be doing it. I'm clearly not, so I'm not. And I'm not going to force myself to do anything, because I absolutely don't have to. I'm always like, if I just let my nervous system run point and do what she needs to do, she'll be in a position to do whatever I want her to do at a certain point in time. I will have the creative energy or the filming energy or whatever. If I try and force it, all of a sudden my nervous system looks at me like, oh, you don't respect us. We do nothing for you now. Like, genuinely speaking, and I'm PDA profile as well. So my nervous system's ability to be like, cool, not doing it, is up there. So I have to respect what my nervous system is telling me at a time, but there's nothing that I should be doing that overrides the fact that I absolutely have to listen to my internal guidance, and I have to listen to my nervous system if I want to get anything done at all. Anything.
That is salient advice. I think we tend to, because there's a lot of shame and guilt and fear that's attached with us not doing the shoulds, that really, again, aids in us gaslighting ourselves, because I think our society is so good at conditioning us to carry on the demands of the society without anyone else being there, that we can be completely alone in our homes and still be performing. That's so crazy to me. Like, I noticed that.
Yeah, it astounds me. It astounds me. There was a point in my life where I was like, I have to have a morning routine. First of all, says who? And I was like, I have to set my alarm for 5 a.m. Again, I'm PDA profile. I set that alarm at 5 a.m. I can't count the number of times I snoozed it. I would get out of bed at 8:59, walk the 2 steps over to my desk and start working. One day I forgot to set my alarm. Do you know what time I woke up? 5:30. Because all of a sudden I didn't have to. And I felt like, oh, I'm energized to get out of bed, I'm going to do it. Oh, I'm energized to do this, I'm going to do it. All of a sudden I started going to the gym in the morning. If I don't feel like doing it, I'm not going to do it though. Because I don't owe myself that type of continuity. I've decided as well that the only thing I should be doing is looking after myself. What that looks like on a day-to-day varies. I'm not going to hold myself to continuously do this thing if it stops working for me. And I'll revisit it if it starts working for me again. But the only thing you owe yourself is your well-being. What that looks like and how you get there, only you can determine that, because you know yourself better than anybody else does. Everybody that is telling you that you should do something against your better judgment and against your nervous system, I think it was Taylor Tomlinson that said this. She said this in a completely different context, but I'll apply it here. They don't really give a heck if you live or die, so maybe don't think about them too much. So anybody that's telling you, oh, you have to be doing this amount of times in order to get these results, hasn't taken your neurotype into consideration, hasn't taken your brain and how you function and show up into consideration. And they're not an authority figure on you. You are. You're the only authority figure on yourself.
Oh goodness, I love that so much. That is very, very important advice. I think that's actually a good place to wrap it up. I would love to end on that note, just to reiterate what you just said. Nobody else is an authority figure on you. There may be people who may have, who think they have the best intentions for you, but at the end of the day, how another person governs their life is not the same way that you could be or should be or must govern your own life.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. I thank you so much, Praise Aura, for taking time and sharing your words of wisdom. Before we go, I would love to know, if you had any parting words or any words of advice for people who are just starting out on their journey to discovering their neurodivergence overall. I know we touched on regulating your nervous system and getting in touch with that, but just overall, if someone is questioning, they may be on social media, they may be seeing some content and just want to know where to start, what would you say to those people as a word of advice?
Be kind to yourself, be curious about yourself and accommodate yourself. Whether you are, wherever you're at in the journey, if you think you might be neurodivergent, you might be autistic, you might have ADHD, be kind to yourself. Be curious about yourself, really get to know yourself. You're discovering a completely new layer to yourself, and accommodate yourself like you are. See what works. This is your journey. There's going to be ups and downs, but you get to discover yourself in a completely new light now.
That's awesome. And then please let everyone know where they can find you and support the work that you do.
Thank you so much. So I'm on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. On TikTok, I'm Praise Aura, PRAISEARA. On Instagram, I am Praise Aura _, so same spelling as before with the underscore at the end. And then YouTube, Praise space Aura.
That, you guys, was Praise Aura. I absolutely love talking to her. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I will be leaving links to her socials in the description. I definitely highly encourage you guys check her out. she has great content. Like I said earlier, she has this unique way of being able to concisely deconstruct the shared experiences that we have in the autistic community in a way that is just like so eloquently put and are like great little like sound bites and like thought nuggets to leave you with. So definitely love her content and encourage you guys to check her out. And that actually leads me into part 2 of this special double episode. I love that we touched on being able to like self-regulate and bring yourself to a point where you are safe within your body and you're able to read your body's natural system of like letting you know when things are not okay. Because a lot of us, when we have trauma, we've never learned how to actually like read our body signals. And because of that, when you are in a highly traumatic time, which we are in right now, and we're being inundated on a daily basis with, you know, the truth and the horrors of what's happening in our world that we've turned a blind eye to for far too long. Like, we're living in a time where we're being inundated with a lot of trauma. And so I feel like there are so many people who want to be involved, who want to show that they care, but they don't know how to show up, or they don't have the capacity to show up in the way that they want to show up. And they're feeling guilt, or they're feeling despair. They're feeling like, oh, well, if I can't show up in a certain way, I might as well not show up at all. And I feel like it's important that we have a conversation with people who have been there, who have been doing the fight, who have been doing this kind of work, who also have an understanding of what it means to have a limited capacity in certain ways due to being disabled and being neurodivergent, for us to have a conversation that kind of acknowledges and validates the experience that we're having currently, while also giving you some hope by giving you some tips and just like a different perspective to look at your ability to affect change on even a small level, and how that all plays a part in the bigger picture that we're trying to paint here. So I'm going to stop flapping my gums and turn it over to part 2, my interview with Jesenia, aka Neurospicy Networking. Thank you guys once again for stopping by. I'm super excited to have a returning guest on, welcoming back Jesenia. You might know her if you follow her as Neurospicy Networking. And I'm super excited for us to get into a special conversation today. So you guys may have seen a new theme with this, with the second season, where I have more of an interview style with my guests. But today we're going to have a robust conversation, just a back and forth about some really important topics that I'm excited, or not excited, but that I'm ready to really discuss in a great way. So Jesenia, thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely. I'm actually stimming a little bit because I'm so excited. I'm just like, I can't wait to get started. Let's do this.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I wanted to do was discuss more current events, but from a lens that is deconstructed and really having pattern recognition and this like perspective of history applied to it, right? So unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the major focus of like world conflict right now is what's happening between Israel and Palestine. And my first thing that I want to talk about is, or at least ask you from your perspective, Jesenia, is how difficult has it been for you to have conversations about the objective facts of what's been going on both sides of this conflict with people who may not keep themselves informed or may not, be ready to hear certain information?
I want to start by saying not every conversation is meant for you to have, right? These are conversations that need to be had. But if you are somebody who has experienced trauma, is dealing with CPTSD, has a neurodiversity, and has to, manage your nervous system, it might not fall onto you to have this conversation. You can't have this conversation from an activated state. You can't have this conversation if you are like on the verge of breakdown and meltdown. So that's number one. You have to take care of your health first, right? So there's a lot of that is kind of counter to what this is not what everyone is saying. Like everyone's saying, don't look away, don't run away from this conversation. And that is 100% true. But there are some of us who've been doing this work, who have been fighting this fight and have been living through surviving a genocide here in the United States, the Black genocide, the indigenous genocide that we're still living through. It's not as acute as what's happening in Gaza right now, but it is still happening. So for the people who are and still have been living through this, it might not be up to you to have that conversation. So that is something that every individual has to decide for themselves. Now, if you're in a place where you can be nervous system regulated, then what you're trying to do is have a conversation where you connect to the other person. So it also depends on the relationship you have with somebody, right? This is not a conversation for you to have with trolls. This is not a conversation for you to be arguing with people on the internet with. This is a conversation for the people you actually know. You have a relationship with them and you want to build and pull upon your lived experiences together to discuss what's happening. And so their history as much as their history, depending on what your relationship is like. And so you're going to have that conversation. And it's going to be cultivated by the relationship that you have with that person. So, for example, with my family, it's a hard conversation to have because they're very much in the world. They're still in this religious indoctrination mindset. So we don't even have the same base level understanding of what colonization is, right? They don't understand what decolonizing is. They don't understand the history. So for me to even have that conversation with them, I have to sit down and have 2 weeks worth of educational conversations to get them to the same level where they can then understand why this conflict is happening and what's going on. And that is something that I'm actually going to have to do when I go visit my family for the holidays. And so that is something that I'm trying to prepare myself for, and I'm having a conversation with my family. We are indigenous. We are from a country that has been colonized by the United States, and it's currently and still actively, which is Venezuela. We're first generation. So trying to teach them about our history as Venezuelans, our history as Americans, and then understanding that the majority of what they've been taught has been indoctrination and lies is going to be a difficult pull, because you're asking them to change their entire worldview to even understand something like this. So you can have the conversation about the topic, but if you don't have that foundational knowledge, you really can't get there. So that is really the work that I'm looking forward to and having to do with my family. But again, I'm only having that conversation with my family. I'm not engaging with people on the internet. I'm not engaging because this is part of my self-care. I have to be able to get up in the morning and be activated so that I can do things like this, so that I can do things like One Free Community, calling up justice, virtual protesting, all of the things that I've been working on in the last couple of weeks. I can't do that if I'm about to fall to pieces. So this is where the community care and self-care are very, very vital, especially for the people who have already been doing the fight.
That is excellent advice, and advice that even I need, because sometimes getting so stuck in my ways, like this is, I firmly believe this, call it a strong sense of justice or whatever, but because it's what I firmly believe, sometimes I even lose sight of the fact that I am speaking to or trying to educate people who are not coming from the same base level of understanding that I do. And I think that is an issue that a lot of people have. They're like, well, I get it, so you should get it too. And we lose sight of the empathy and the compassion that must also accompany educating, because if you want someone to learn something, you're not going to get them to be open or receptive to it if you continue to shame them or make them feel guilty. Like those kinds of feelings make people double down into their stance, and makes them want to continue to do what they're doing, out of cognitive dissonance or just out of spite sometimes, because they feel attacked for their lack of understanding or their worldview that may have been misinformed. Now, you brought up something that I think is super, super important to talk about, and that's like this religious aspect, this religious indoctrination, right? I made a video recently, and I don't know if it's back up or if it's still down or whatever, but I was talking about how I believe that there is a specific reason why politics and religion are so often intertwined, even in a country like the US, where we supposedly have a separation of church and state. And that's because when you can stoke such a emotional connection, which people's religious beliefs are intrinsic to who they are, like it is built into their identity, to the point that it's so hard for them to like see it from an outside perspective. If you can tie that to a certain political leaning, you're going to get supporters that stay with you no matter what. And it turns something that is purely political into this discussion like it's a religious or a spiritual war, when in reality it's all political. But how hard has it been to, like, you know, in your experience, like speaking to someone who is fully still in that colonial mindset of, you know, Christianity, Christian supremacy, and yeah, just like fighting through that first layer of like, wow, I have to talk about something that you are going to fight me on tooth and nail before I can even get to the current and more pressing issue.
Yeah. So the conversation that the question that you're asking is difficult, because you're trying to say, how do you get around it? And you don't get around it, right? When you Two things came up when you were talking. Is one is, anytime that you're having a conversation with somebody, if you are activated, they're activated, whatever their responses are trauma responses, and they're going to be projecting that, and they're going to fall back into whatever indoctrination and programming that's going to have them spitting out the same thoughts in the same terms. They're not in their critical thinking mind because they're activated, right? So they're thinking that this is a dangerous situation, and their nervous system is treating it that way. So there's the first thing. And then second thing is that you have to talk to them from the stance that they are currently at. That's what we mean by meet them where they're at. We're not trying to convince them that where they're at is wrong, because they don't see it that way. What we need to do is say, okay, these are your beliefs, right? This is what you believe, whatever religion it may be. And how do your beliefs match what is actually happening? But you have to do it really slowly. That's the other thing. That's why we have to lean on the relationship that we currently have with this person. And we're coming at it with compassion. When they activated, your response is to step back and be like, I want to have this conversation with you, but I see that you're upset. So we're going to pause and come back. And that might take several times of doing this pause and come back and pause and come back and pause and come back, because they're always going to respond with that Pavlovian response of, I heard this, therefore I say that, regardless of what the topic is. And for you to break them out of that, you have to break the pattern, and to break the pattern, you have to interrupt it, interrupt that nervous system response. So it's difficult, because you're fighting years of indoctrination. You're fighting centuries of colonization, and the normalization of society to thinking that this is, in their worldview, this is normal. This is what the world should look like. And so you're telling them you're wrong, and here's why. And that's just gonna create a situation where you're constantly fighting with them about the reality of the world they live in. This brings back the conversation we had the last time we spoke, that I believe that each one of us the multiverse is existing in each of us, because we each live in a reality, in a world that we see in ourselves, right? So somebody who has been colonized for so long and hasn't done any anti-racism work or any studying of indigenous cultures will not comprehend that the system is set up to be anti-Black, right? So when you take religion out of it and you come back to always centering humanity, right? What is your humanity belief, regardless of what your religion says? What is your belief? What is humanity connecting to each other and having that empathy to the next person?
That's a good point. We bringing up humanity, because that's what colonization does, is it dehumanizes any group that diverges from the script that has been ordained as being like the right thing to do. And so that kind of language I see baked in to the system that has been allowed to perpetuate. One of the things that like instantly connected to me with the current situation, at least between Israel and Palestine, is how Hamas has become the new Al Qaeda, where they take this one group who I don't support the actions, but I understand the why behind the what, right? They take the what that they did and hyper focus on that, and then make a blanket statement to say, see, this rogue group that took matters into their own hands, they represent everybody in this whole area. And then what that does is it dehumanizes them. It doesn't make them individuals. It makes everybody in that area responsible and complicit by default with the actions of a few. And going back to what you were saying earlier, where you have to meet people where they are, that Pavlovian response of fear, the fear of the unknown. A phrase I use a lot is "dam not quod non intellegunt." It's a Latin phrase that means they condemn what they don't understand. So if you put this thing in front of them that they don't understand, that they fear, then it will allow them to give you permission to do atrocious things that are justified in their mind. So after 9/11, there were so many people, myself included, I have to, admit to my previous indoctrination. I was only, in 9/11, I was like 12 or 13 years old. So, I felt like we were justified in going over into the Middle East and doing what we were doing because I felt for the okie doke that these are terrorists and they're just terrorists for no reason. I'm asking this because I'm like, the why behind the what? Why is it so hard for people to or why do you think it's so hard for people to look that one layer below the surface? Why is it so easy for us to get people to stay focused on the what as opposed to understanding the why? Because if we understood the why, we would see that the same thing that's happening now happened 20 years ago, happened 20 years before that in the early 90s with the first attack that allowed us to go into the Gulf War. I want to get other people's perspective on why they think it's so hard to get people to focus on the why and not the what. Why is it so easy for us to just latch on to the what?
Because it's the response is what they want to talk about. So anytime I have this conversation and people bring up Hamas, I said, we're not talking about Hamas. Hamas doesn't exist in my conversations because they only know how to respond to those words. So if I'm like, I'm not and never will I be talking about Hamas in this conversation because this conversation is about the Palestinian people. Okay. So I don't care what Hamas is doing. I am going to focus on the people. And so if you can't connect to those people, if you can't see what's happening to those people as dehumanizing, then we're still not at the point where we can have that conversation about the why. They're only going to focus on the what because they can't understand why we would want to even have that conversation. That is, again, the white supremacy sense of urgency that they just want to, oh my God, we have to right now. Like, we don't have time to get into the philosophical reasons of this or the history of it. I don't have time to learn the history because this is happening right now. And while true, you can't have that conversation with that person because they're not ready to have that conversation yet. We have to focus on how I lost my thought. Go ahead. If
that's okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I think my frustration lies in because cognitive dissonance really keeps people in such a chokehold. When you try to explain to them or present to them, even in a calm way, hey, do you see how what's happening currently with how they're using Hamas as a complete blanket and shield to try to garner support for going in and committing terrorist acts and retribution? Do you not see how that's similar to what we did with Al Qaeda? And then people they'll just double down and we're not talking about Afghanistan and Iraq right now. We're talking about what's happening in Israel. I'm like, but we're not actually. When we're talking about this current thing, to go back to what you were saying about the sense of urgency, they'll try to redirect it. Well, that was 20 years ago. I was but no, that's actually still happening. And this is just another incarnation of what has been continuing to happen. But because we're so stuck in this sense of urgency, we're looking at the what and not the why behind the what. The what's continue to happen because it's like when someone's sick or you have a wound, you're supposed to pull out the splinter before you bandage it. You can't just slap a Band-Aid on it, because otherwise the splinter will stay in, get infected, and eventually you're going to have to like take larger measures. You can't just continue to, you know, put a Band-Aid on it. But I think that's what people do. They want to just address the immediate issue without getting to the symptoms or the source of why that issue is even happening. Because what that will do is, I think people are afraid to examine their own beliefs. They're afraid to confront the fact that, yeah, if I open my mind and my understanding up to this thing, I could find out that this whole time I've been, you know, supporting and upholding a system that supports genocide, supports, you know, the eradication of a whole people group.
The white supremacy cultures of right to comfort is the right to not have to feel hard feelings. Okay. And then when you have that coupled with the desire to avoid having the thought, well, if I'm wrong about this, what else am I wrong about? And then everything starts to crumble. So it is literally an attack on their identity, because it is an attack on everything that they understand to be true, not realizing that that was not by their choice. That's why propaganda works. That's why we're here, and that's why we're in the place that we're at. And then you couple that with the lack of education and the miseducation and the whitewashing of history, and basically the lack of history that we were taught. So we're only taught what we were told and not what actually happened. So you have many generations of this happening. I mean, we're talking all the way back to pre-colonization of the United States, pre-colonization of Europe. It just keeps going back and back and back. So we end up forgetting to ask the question, who benefits, rather than focusing on the what is happening or why it's happening. I always try to center the who's benefiting from you believing that. Just think about it in that way. And now, can you put yourself in the shoes of the other person and say, who is benefiting? Like, if you were me and I was asking the question, who is benefiting from me believing that? I'm happy and willing to have that introspective conversation about, like, am I wrong? Are my beliefs wrong? Or I do that work, but they're not. They're staunchly in their belief and are not willing to look at the what if I'm wrong conversation. And that's really where it comes down to. The people who are willing to have that conversation and the people who aren't willing. And then you have to figure out, why aren't they willing? Are they not willing because they have very strongly held beliefs that keep them stuck in their ways? Is it tied to their identity? Is it tied to their religion? Like, what is it about having a hard conversation is hard for you? Is it because, like most of us, we were raised by adults who didn't know how to teach us, because they weren't taught how to regulate their nervous systems, how to co-regulate, how to handle big emotions? Like, you have full ass grown adults in their 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up, that don't know how to manage their own emotions. So how and why would they want to put themselves in a state where they're going to be unregulated or dysregulated because you're asking them hard questions and they don't have the tools to deal with the emotions that come up when you have hard questions? So we're talking about having conversations with entire populations of traumatized people, generationally traumatized, not just our generations, but all the generations that came before them, and all the epigenetics that are affecting our levels of stress and our health. And then you have the social determinants of health that are keeping specific populations, minority populations, even more unhealthy. And then you have systems of oppression that keep us working to our bone, so we're so tired that we can't even have a moment to have the thinking part of this conversation, right? Like, there's just so many layers to why people aren't willing or able to have that conversation. That's where the compassion and empathy that we have to have to the people. And I know this is hard for some people to hear because they're so loud and they're so wrong. And you're still like, okay, but I try to step back and think of it as what happens after. So we can't reach for a better world if we can't dream a better world. So let's pause and dream of the better world. In the better world, we've resolved this conflict. We've ended colonization. We're finally starting to build communities and systems and a gift economy and reconnecting to our indigenous practices. We're in that stage. All those people that were wrong, we're not throwing them away. We're not leaving them in the dust. They have to come along with us. They have to be willing to build with us, and we have to bring them with us. So when you think of the conversation that you're having with someone and think of it from that terms, I'm like, I want to bring you with me to the new world. How am I gonna bring you with me? I want you to understand. I want you to come with me. I love you. I have so much love for humanity. I want to give that to the people who are so wrong and they still don't know it yet. So that's what I think about when I'm having these conversations, to keep myself from feeling that despair, because the despair is what they want us to feel. They want us to feel despair. They want us to feel apathetic. So we give up, stop fighting, stop having these conversations, stop acting.
Absolutely. When you brought that up, the first thing that I thought of was the quote unquote protest fatigue that I've seen people talking about. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I am a Starbucks crackhead. Like, I will admit it from the jump. And like I said, you don't even have to know me well to know that I love Starbucks. I have not had Starbucks and I've lost count of how many days. And it hasn't even been that difficult personally for me. But here's what I am hearing from some people, right? And it goes back to the right to comfort and goes back to a lot of things that you were just bringing up about how there's so many people who their everyday lives are so difficult because of systemic barriers that they can't even muster up enough of a fuck, to care enough to educate themselves and have these kind of conversations. So they get this boycott fatigue when it's really just, I miss my comforts because I am so tired of not having any kind of real comforts that I'm not going to, me not having a Starbucks is not going to save the world. Like, but when you have, a couple 100,000 people thinking that way and not realizing or connecting the dots that, like, no, if we do actually stick to our guns and just be a little bit uncomfortable for a little while, we can move toward everybody being more comfortable. But instead, we're put into a situation where so many people don't know where their next, paycheck is coming from, don't know where their next meal is coming from, don't know where X, Y, and Z is coming from, that if their little small comfort is the fact that they can muster up a change for a macchiato once a week, or they can go to McDonald's and get something from whatever menu they have now, they're going to do it. And you bring up such a great point that we need to keep focused, because I think a lot of times, especially in our space where you may have a very strong sense of justice, you may have black and white thinking, and because it makes logical sense to you, you can't realize or you don't understand the emotional side of it for other people, that we need to understand that just because it's black and white to us, it's not going to always be black and white to other people, and to show compassion when we're talking about this. I have to admit that that's also something that I struggle with still to this day. Because again, I have this strong sense. I'm like, it just makes sense. It's just right. But again, I have the ability to work through cognitive dissonance and not let the discomfort of new information or contradictory information to what I believe keep me from moving through that. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's hard. It's like, what needs to be done, but like, how do you do it? How do you implement that? Especially in the moment where you're talking to someone they may be talking to you from an activated state and you may be staying calm, but like nothing you're doing is able to get them to stop responding from this, basal, like lizard brain level. Like, I don't know, that to me has been like the hardest part of this.
Yeah.
Is people just doubling down.
So part of the conversation that I wrote down some notes so I wouldn't forget what I wanted to say, but in that specific instance, this person is still activated. And if you have the spoons and the energy to, and you have the relationship with them, stop the conversation and co-regulate. Okay. You got to teach them how to manage their own emotions before you can teach them how to have a conversation. This is where I go into having healthier arguments with people. You're having the same arguments with people regardless of the topic, because they are not in a space where they have learned how to manage their emotional state. And so you can doesn't matter what the conversation is, if they're activated, they're going to lash out the same way that anybody who has not learned how to emotionally regulate is going to. And there's a lot of people who tend to say this is childish, or this is, add this infantilization portion to it, but it's not. All ages have this problem because we have generations of people who haven't learned how to do this. So that's where if you are comfortable with and have the capacity to, you're not having a conversation anymore. Now you have to co-regulate with this person so that they can get back into the state where they understand they're loved, you love them, and that's it. The conversation is over. You can't talk to people if they're in a screaming match with themselves, because that's what's happening in their heads. They're not hearing you. They're screaming at whoever put those words in their heads. So the 3 things I wrote down while we were talking is who benefits from that, right? And I think I mentioned that earlier, so that's an older note. The sense of justice. So here's the thing about autistic sense of justice. It's still based off of your core belief. So if your core belief is white supremacist, your sense of justice is going to be strongly white supremacist, and there's no convincing you otherwise until you can start to have that conversation about what is the basis of your center. Is it decolonized or not? And are you willing to have that conversation? Are you open to even understanding that we live in a world right now where white bodies are put at the top of the pedestal? Okay, and so then going back to the boycott fatigue, war fatigue, even though this isn't a war, this is a genocide, right? That's why it upsets me when people use the word conflict or war. This is a genocide. So let's call it what it is.
Thank you.
So the fatigue that they're feeling is, yes, you have already of the socioeconomic world in race scale that we live in, that you live in. If you're somebody who is upper middle class because your family has been upper middle class and you have benefited from slavery and your family has benefited from slavery, and now you're here and you're like, oh shit, I'm realizing what's happening and I need to boycott. You are the people that are in the front line. You are the people that need to be the ones at the front line of the protest protecting Black and brown bodies. You are the people that need to be not spending your dollars and making sure that your money is going to organizations that are helping fight the cause, because you have benefited generationally, financially, systemically. Not to say that your personal hard-earned comforts and status and what have you in life weren't because of the things that you did, but you have to acknowledge that there is a history of disenfranchisement for everybody else who isn't in your shoes. And so if you are a single Black mother and you have no money, you have no dollars to your name, and the last thing that you need is a Starbucks to buy a Starbucks because you're just losing your shit and this is going to help you regulate. Okay. I would suggest that you go to a local shop instead of Starbucks, because there's lots of local shops and you can even shop Black owned, you can shop Palestinian owned, you can just shop local, right? That's always been the key. Like for me, it's replacement, right? A lot of people need, you don't scream. This is what upsets me right now about watching some videos on TikTok is like, everything's on fire. Okay, great. But what do you want me to do about it?
Right.
If you don't give me action points, you're just adding to the doom scrolling. You need to say, okay, so this is what you want to do next. Stop buying Starbucks, buy local. Boom, easy, right? Stop using Amazon. Buy from local shops if you can. This is always going to depend on your situation, your spoons, your financial situation, your socioeconomic situation. This is not advice for everybody. You have to make the decision dependent on what's your life, right? Because there are disabled people who are trying to be part of the movement and are trying, and like what we should be doing is listening to disabled people, listening to the most marginalized people. They have been doing this work. You don't have to figure it out on your own, but you have to be pointing people to action if you want them to feel the fatigue they're feeling is because they're still in this individualistic mindset. I can't do anything. I'm not helping. I. And you have to connect to community and get that community care to feel refilled and rejuvenated. This is community work. This is not something that is going to happen individually. And if we keep thinking that way, we're not going to succeed in overthrowing colonization.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you brought that up because yes, like I see that because there are so many more people like starting to at least wake up to it, they want to do their part, right? But the first point you made about like there not really being a real call to action, it's more like a do this because of this, but they don't give you like step that you can do. When you're new to this, you don't really know what else you can do. So you just like, you don't realize that like, oh, I don't have to completely give this up. I can find a replacement that's more sustainable or that supports the cause and things like that. But more so the point that like really got me fired up was like how people still look at it as an individual thing, right? So especially here in America, we're so individualistic where it's like, you know, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. What's mine is mine and I'll get mine any way I can. That's like most people's, they're okay with that being the system, right? So even if they do start to try to enter social justice areas, they still bring the remnants of that, well, it's up to me and this is what I'm doing. And we don't connect back that, like you said, this is community work. We've been so ripped away from what is intrinsic to humanity, which is to be in community with each other, that even in the things that we're trying to do to help other people, we're still making it about ourselves. I've seen so many people when they've made like posts about the conflict, they're also looping in like, you know, plugs for their like Cash App or Venmo or something like that. It's like, unless you're donating that money to the cause, I don't think that you should be trying to personally profit from this. I know that you're using your platform to bring awareness, but if you're also enriching yourself at the same time, like you're bringing this like, well, I got to get mine anyway I can sit, you know, and that's going to lead us to this, you know, quote unquote boycott fatigue. I saw a video and I really wish that I like wrote down the stats from a creator that I really appreciate. They talk about decolonizing a lot. And they were like, all the people who say, we're not our ancestors, you know, I'll fight back against X, Y, and Z. And they literally listed out like how long previous boycotts, like the Montgomery bus boycott lasted over a year. But like we're 4 or 5 weeks into boycotting, you know, Starbucks, or not even a full 5 weeks at this point. I think we're just at a month almost of boycotting Starbucks. And there's already people talking about, I don't know, I need my coffee or I need my egg McMuffin or whatnot. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know if I have a question there or I'm just like fired up. It's just like so disappointing because again, like I understand the being on the other side and being in a place where like the propaganda worked because I was indoctrinated as an American growing up here that America is, you know, the world police and we have the right to and blah, 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 blah. And as I grew older and learned to think for myself and was able to see the forest for the trees, it makes me sad sometimes when I know that I'm speaking to people who they just intrinsically are programmed to not get it, and not only not get it but fight you when you like bring them objective facts. It's like you can't even like when you think if I just give like objective facts that will help, and it just doesn't. The filter
no the autistic desire to explain, give facts, give resources, all of these things are not going to change somebody's mind. Anybody who's interested, look into and read up about deep canvassing if you're really wanting to learn how to do this effectively. But the truth is that we have to this boycott until this is boycott forever. You're changing your whole lifestyle. You've decided to become vegan. You don't look for vegan alternatives to foods. You look for whole foods that are not animal products. Otherwise, you're just gonna keep eating a bunch of Pop-Tarts. You know, junk food is vegan. Okay, so you're not any healthier for being vegan because you stopped eating animal products. You only are healthier if you choose to eat the certain way, right? It's the same way as giving up sugar. You're giving up a particular brand. You're not giving up coffee. We didn't say give up coffee. I don't understand how hard that is for people. Like, You are changing brands. That's it. Buy another brand. Support a brand that is actually pro-Palestinian. Support a brand that is anti-genocide. It's as simple as that, right? You don't need to, you can give facts and figures and numbers, and that helps some people. But if you're having an argument with somebody who's just like already so far that way, that's not a conversation. That might not be a conversation for you, right? You're depending on where your relationship is with people is going to depend on who you talk to and how you talk to them. So again, you're not trying to argue with the trolls. You can't think of your conversations. How do I get everybody along? You can't talk to everybody. You're one person. What you can do is take care of yourself and talk to the people that you know. And if everybody can commit to that and making that one brand switch or 2 or 3 brand switch, we're boycotting Disney, we're boycotting McDonald's, we're boycotting Starbucks. That's not that hard. Don't eat at McDonald's, eat somewhere else. Even better if it's local, right? I'm always going to say local. So find your local coffee shop, find your local fast food place, and find your local and watch indie films or something, right? Like give your money to the people who actually care about people.
Yeah. And it's so weird. It's going even back to that. Like a lot of people, their beliefs, even small beliefs like what brand I like, are so hard to like detach from their identity, right? So like some people, they make like being a Starbucks fan part of their identity. Like I told you earlier, anybody who knows me, they think it's here. They're like, oh, Starbucks. I got a bunch of Apple products, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty loyal to these brands, right? But if we needed to boycott Apple, it would be difficult for me. All of my stuff is Apple, but I would try to find a way within my means to slowly but surely detach myself from my dependency from that. Something like Starbucks was easy. Yeah. Like you said, all I did was switch to local. I started making coffee at home and things like that. I never really was a McDonald's eater. So for me, that personally wasn't difficult. Disney, I'm a huge Marvel fan. I'm a huge MCU fan and everything like that. But I still have to be like, okay, well, right now I'm not going to be, streaming from Disney Plus because I don't want to give my money to Disney Plus right now. This is part of my protest. But again, like that, even we don't even think about that. We think about religion and even like political affiliations, even maybe cultural affiliations, that people's beliefs are hard to break. But it could be a small belief like I believe Starbucks is the best coffee. That could be a barrier to break through just to get somebody to like open up and listen. And I think that people don't really understand how deeply rooted even the smallest beliefs are. And that's why we get into these conversations that sometimes turn into arguments. When you start talking about coffee, you're like, how do we start getting into a whole argument when it started with talking about coffee. Not having a...
Well, Starbucks, I remember the days before Starbucks. I personally think Starbucks is the worst coffee that you can buy, period. Like I will buy gas station coffee over Starbucks. Okay, that's how bad I think it is. Actually, a lot of gas stations have really good coffee, by the way, for some reason. But I don't think that people realize like this obsession with brands. First of all, it doesn't mean throw away every Apple product you have because now you found out that they support the genociding in Congo. Okay, no, we're not throwing things away. What we're doing is not giving them any more of our money. Divest, right? Mm-hmm. But the other piece of it is these things existed before, and what comes after? What do you want your life to look like when we're living in the better world, when we're living in the future that we want to live in? I want to live in a future where I know my neighbors so well that I can knock on their door and say, hey, I forgot to buy carrots for this recipe. Do you have any? Right? That's not something that's really ingrained in a lot of us because we were all raised in this society, in this system, in this mentality of colonization. So like everything from brand loyalty to individualism to thinking about how we think about the world, everything was designed to keep you working and them making money off your labor. And you spending the very, very few dollars that they decide to give us, if at all, on stuff to buy for them. It's like we're living in the entire country as a company town. So where are you going to spend your money?
That's a great way to look at it. Yes, I think you're exactly right. Like, because most people don't even have the spoons to connect those dots, they don't get it. They don't understand how, yes, you as an individual by yourself do not have a lot of power in the system, but your individual decisions in connection to other people has an impact. So, yes, you're saying, well, me not buying my Starbucks, isn't going to change the world. No, but you may be supporting this local business will keep their doors open, and then they can maybe employ somebody, and it has a ripple effect when you keep how your actions impact other people in mind. That shifts your whole perspective. But again, we live in this individualistic society and culture where it's like, well, I don't have to worry about how my actions affect other people. We could even like apply that to masking, like, with COVID, like so many people were like, well, I don't want to wear a mask, so I don't care what my actions have to how they impact other people. And here we are, almost 4 years later, with nothing getting better on the pandemic front, people still sick, getting sick, but you'll still have people like, well, it's my individual right. We don't keep how our individual actions impact the collective in mind when we do anything. And I think that should be the first shift or the first conversation that we have with people. I don't know, like if you're starting to try to set that level set, whether you're talking to somebody who's still completely indoctrinated in colonization or not, if you start by saying like, hey, well, how do your individual actions impact the collective, or your individual beliefs impact the collective to start to get people to open up?
And you show that impact by pulling up stock. Like I do this every couple of days. I pull up the stock of the big three that we're both boycotting right now, and you see them plummeting. We have impact. We have our voice. My little one decision doesn't sound like much, but when we all coordinate our decisions and focus our actions, that's what community organizing is about. That's what activism is about, is getting all of us in the same boat. This is where I wanted to say earlier, where every individual person on TikTok who's a creator, they're like, come join my community. We're going to get together and do something. Great, wonderful. I love that you want to do something. Find an organization that's already doing it. They've been doing it for 5-10 years. They've been working on this for a while. Come join them. Or maybe you join them and they're not the right fit, and then you find another one because you were in a community that is going to be engaged and connected to other communities, whether it's physical, local, or online. And this is where I come back to like the principles of disability justice and cross solidarity movement. Like we have to connect and unite all of our identities, all of our intersectional identities, and all of our communities. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be sharing our resources. We need to be acting globally, or thinking globally and acting locally. And to do that, we need to coordinate. And you can't coordinate if you're talking to only the 10 people that joined your group.
Absolutely.
So like, for example, like we hosted a, so there was this protest on November 4th in DC, one of the largest protests in history, not just of Palestine, in history, not even talking about on the news. Okay. Nobody's talking about it. But we decided, we were like, hey, not everyone can go because of financial reasons or because we're disabled and we can't physically get there. So and it's not accessible because people aren't wearing masks, right? So a lot of people want to be inclusive, a lot of organizations saying that they're inclusive, but then they're not enforcing mask mandates so that it can be inclusive to the disabled community. We see this, we know this. There's thousands of us here and we're staying in our homes and still quarantining because we know the world does not care about us and does not keep our safety in mind because they're not wearing a mask. We can see it in your face. If we see your face out in public, you do not care about us. The ableism is visible now. But my point is that we saw this need, that there was no virtual options for people to participate in these events. Like I reached out to the local event here. Other people had been trying to find, hey, is there anything we can do from our homes for the people who can't make it? And we couldn't find anything. I posted something in collaboration with a couple other people, and in 24 hours, I was expecting like 10 to 15 people to see it because of the suppression that you're seeing about Free Palestine, all of this suppression that's happening, which we want to talk about some of those suppression tactics and how to get around them. But we posted this video, and one of the people who didn't even collaborate with us, they just saw our thing and posted it, and it went viral. We had 500 people sign up to do a virtual protest. So we still plan on doing more. One Free Community and Calling Up Justice are partnering to help create these events, and we're going to keep doing more. We have resources that we've created, a link tree where you can go and find all of the resources that our community shared, both in that protest event and in One Free Community server. We collecting them and putting them in one place so that people can go and find more information. There's podcasts, there's videos, there's the BDS movement, there's the Palestine Academy 101 courses. Like, these are all other people's resources, but we're collecting them in one place so that it's easier to go and find. I can click and find all this information, and also find communities that are doing similar things. So it's out there, and it's hard for us to get people to hear about it because our accounts are being suppressed.
Absolutely. No, you bring up several different good points. First, I love how you said that we need to think globally but act locally, because I feel like a lot of people are new to this work because of what's currently happening, and we want to welcome them in, but a lot of people get overwhelmed with the scale of what's going on. And even if they're not on the side where it's like, well, I'm as an individual, I can't help. Maybe they are someone who already has a large platform or a decent sized platform. And again, because we've been so indoctrinated in being individualistic, they think they're helping by starting their own little way to do things. But what that does is it scatters our resources. We're more powerful together. So if it was a way for us to be more centralized and coordinate our efforts, we could actually get more done. It makes a bigger impact to have one large organization of 20,000 people as opposed to 2,000 organizations with 10 people in it. Even if you're all, shooting to do for the same end goal, if you are dividing your efforts that way, it's not nearly as powerful as coming together as a united front, as a united force. Also, you can actually reduce the amount of work. Many hands make light work. So if you have multiple people doing the same thing on different fronts, you're just kind of, I don't want to say wasting resources, but you're not utilizing the resources to the best of their ability because you're reduplicating the same work over and over again, and it's not allowing us to move forward. So that actually leads me into what you were bringing up about like suppression tactics. I actually really want to talk about that because you and I both are on TikTok, and for me, TikTok is my largest audience. I'm on other platforms. I'm on YouTube. I actually would love to transition more primarily to YouTube because it allows you a little bit more freedom in what you're able to say and the content that you're able to do. But for right now, my biggest audience is on TikTok. And I am one of those people who have tried to leverage my audience to get this message out. But I have over 34,000 followers. And for the last month and a half, my videos have not been shown to more than maybe 1% to 2% of my audience. And I'm like, I know we talked a little earlier, you're having the same thing happen to you. Have you heard, or do you think there are like things that we can do in our niche or even like in our communities to get around that so that we can actually get coordinated and connected to other people who want to get in on this work or are doing this work already?
100%. So one of the things in our pattern recognition is listening to other people's attempts and playing around with the algorithm because it changes a lot. So one of the things that we're doing is hashtagging the popular hashtags rather than hashtag Free Palestine. Those are going to be suppressed. The hashtags right now are the thing that they're targeting. So I hashtag Starbucks, hashtag cute puppies, hashtag vacation, what are those like vacation ones, like a travel vlog or whatever it may be, just things that are popular, maybe things that you even talk about, right? That are not about Free Palestine, but then you start the video like, we're going to be talking about puppies. And you know what's great about puppies? They love everyone, even the Palestinians, right? So like just whatever it is, and just launch into whatever you actually want to say. Another thing that they do is they do look at the captions. So a lot of times people will have stopped putting captions on their videos because they think, and it is being suppressed by the captions, but then it makes it inaccessible. So what I like to do is get the captions, download the video, and then re-upload the video with the captions on the screen, but it's already saved as part of the video. So I don't have to add the captions that are part of the TikTok captioning system.
Gotcha.
So that's another way to use around it. There's a lot of different things, but those are the first two that popped up into mind. And, you know, it's interesting because like what becomes viral and what doesn't become viral is going to depend on people's engagement. So what I like to do is tell people in the videos that do get some traction, like halfway through, I'll say, make sure to watch the video all the way through. Make sure to like it later in the video, not right at the beginning. Make sure to comment with actual words and the more words that you use, the more likelihood that it is going to be seen as a true comment. And then if you comment, TikTok also captures like the types of words that you're using in the comments, right? So one video I said, this is a test video. Tell me if it was on the FYP. And so everyone types back FYP, FYP, FYP. And so then the video got pushed more to the FYP because everyone was commenting FYP. Mm-hmm. So just random things like that. There's so many little things that there's too many things that we don't know about behind this black box. So we're just kind of throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But those are just a few of the tactics that I've heard so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to use some of those. The one that I've seen, which I really hate it because it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like people monetizing like content about this, but we all know that TikTok lately has been pushing the TikTok shop. So if you are a TikTok affiliate, all you have to do is show the product at some point in the video to be able to have it be a TikTok shop video. But if people do wind up buying the product, you'll make money off of it. So I tinkered around with it. I put a video up and then I basically immediately took it down. But I think I'm going to do it again with the caveat that any proceeds or any commission that I earn from this video that I'm going to donate to pro-Palestine initiatives, and then actually make a follow-up video showing like, hey, this is me making the donation. This is what I got. This is all going to Palestine. Because for me personally, that's the only way that I could feel good about making a video about Palestine that's going to make me money. Because even though in the situation I'm in economically, I can use every penny I can get, my temporary discomfort is worth it if I can do something even more than what I'm already doing to help people who like literally are fighting for their lives. I can be uncomfortable in the service of people who don't even know if they're going to live to see the next day.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things came up. I wanted to say the TikTok money thing. I don't make money off of TikTok. So anytime somebody tries to send me money or things through the lives and whatnot, I tell them, don't do that. Go to my page, go to my bio, buy me a coffee there. Like TikTok takes a cut. I don't want them not only taking a cut, but having my money because of all of the suppression tactics that they're trying to do here. But yeah, get off of the social media platforms and get into the rooms where the people are talking about this. Another one that like because of that virtual protest that we hosted with over 500 attendees, I was able to connect with an amazing organizer in the Black Phoenix Organizing Collective. And now we're going to be cross-pollinating our organizations. We're going to be helping promote their events. And then we're going to try to teach them how to do hybrid events because we're a disabled community trying to help people include us in the community. And so like there's an amazing event that is for community organizers to get together and talk through the things that they're experiencing, the grief that we're all feeling. And everyone's feeling it's really hard right now. But the thing to get around those difficult feelings, those difficult emotions, that despair that you feel is to fill it with hope. And to fill it with hope, you need to fill it with community.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up because this was actually a recent conversation that I was having where a lot of people are hyper-focused on what we don't want. And this isn't actually shifting gears, but it kind of is talking about like the upcoming election, at least, where, you know, we're hearing the rhetoric that we've been hearing for years and years and years. You just have to vote for blue no matter who. Or just like, do you want Trump again? Do you want Project 2025? And when we keep reacting out of fear and hyper-focusing on what we don't want, that's what we continue to get, because that's where our energy is going. And the conversation that I was trying to have was, if we shift our focus and our energy and our resources into what we do want, I feel like that will be the change here, because like, this is how we stay stuck in the same system that we have. They keep providing this false dichotomy. And so we keep fighting the same fight, not realizing that, oh, if we step out of this and realize that there is an actual viable third option, which is us, the people, actually organizing and figuring out what we want as a collective. Like, this is why we keep staying stuck in the same cycle, is because everyone is narrowly focused on what I don't want. I don't want another Trump. I don't want this, not realizing that we are still getting the same thing. It's just a different face. It has a different tone. But the why or the motivation behind what's happening or who we have is the exact same thing. And I'm
exactly.
like, what?
Exactly. You can't change the system with the same tools that the system is designed to oppress. So we have to abolish the Electoral College, which was designed for slave owners and the people and the one percenters to continue to hold power. Okay. Then we have every single House seat is up for elections. Are you organizing? Are you voting in your local House elections? All right. Are we doing the congressional votes? Like, we have to change all of the people that are currently in power. Now, that is not the only thing that you can do, but you can't afford not to do it. Right. I know there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to vote because the system's broken and blah. Well, now you're giving your people died for you to have the right to vote. And you're giving that up and letting other people take your power because you won't speak, because you won't vote. So if every single person voted and participated in local government and, you know, went out here and advocated for more people to vote, then we can do those things while simultaneously organizing so that we can disrupt and dismantle the system that is currently here. We have to, it's a yes and, right? It's not one or the other. There's no binaries in nature. There's no, everything's a false dichotomy. This obsession with having binaries is part of the white supremacist model, right?
Yes.
There is always a spectrum.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say, like, I'm one of those people who said I'm not voting for Biden, but everybody takes that because of this binary. They're like, oh, so you're not voting. I never said I'm not voting. I said I'm not voting for Biden because I am not going to give my, like you said, hard-earned vote away to someone who I don't believe in and who has a track record of upholding the status quo. But it's so hard to like get people to see outside of the binary. Like, I was one of those people in 2016 that was literally on the ground stomping for Bernie Sanders. And I got told so many times from people on different sides of the aisle, yeah, I believe in what he's saying, but he's never going to get elected. And I was like, why? If all of you guys agree that you think that his platform is the better of the ones that are being presented, why is it that you're just so willing to believe what they're telling you, that he's not viable? Because there were people on both sides of the aisle, people who ended up voting for Trump in the end, who said, hey, I actually would have voted for Bernie, but because I didn't have the opportunity to, I believe more in what Trump was saying. And like, I feel like that was such a great example of how, if we actually focused on what we wanted, and if we also focused on the things that bind us or unite us, as opposed to the myriad of ways that we're different. Because like, okay, here I go. I'm going off on a tangent. One of the things that like society is so good at is keeping us focused on what makes us different. But we are, as humans, infinitely different from each other. We're infinite expressions of humanity, right? So you're always going to encounter people who look different than you, who think different than you, who love different than you, who praise or worship different than you. But at the end of the day, what actually matters is the things that unite us as human beings. But we're so hyper focused on our differences that we don't realize that we have the same enemy at the end of the day. And it's not each other, it's the system, right? And so to me, like 2016 and like Bernie Sanders' campaign put a magnifying glass on how effective this keeping us focused on surface level differences has been, because he was calling out the fact that somebody in rural West Virginia has the same issue as somebody who grew up in the city where I come from, Camden, New Jersey, which used to be the most dangerous city in the country. Like, we have the same issues: poor infrastructure, the schools are underfunded, drug problems, like no economic opportunities, like these things. But on the surface, they'll say, well, you're a white, person from rural Appalachia, you can't possibly have something in common with this Black person from an inner city. But in reality, we have the most important things in common, which is we're human, we're being oppressed by the same system in the same ways, but we're being told to look at each other like we're the enemy.
Mm-hmm. Snaps. Because I don't think you could hear it on the on the recording, but I wanted to say that, yes, absolutely. The things that unite us, and the way you can tell when we have impact when they're trying to silence us. And the more we speak out, the more they want to throw money at silencing us, right? All of this money that's being spent on silencing us would have silenced us if they just, provided the things that we're all looking for. We all want food, we all want shelter, we all want safety. That's it. And then, of course, ideally, we would those are just the basic needs. And then ideally, we would have like a little more to thrive and live. But that's not what they want. They want to hoard resources. So the things that we can do to focus on for speaking of elections is, calling for ranked choice voting, and for us to actually coordinate our votes across the independents. Okay, so we are going to hold the Democrats to their feet to the fire as much as we possibly can, because we don't have the funding to actually do the things the way the system is set up. It's whoever's got the most money is going to be the loudest. Okay, so we have to do the things that we can do and coordinate our efforts, coordinate our movements. So if Jasmine Sherman ends up being the person who's the front runner in the independents, all of the other independents have to fall in line behind her and vote for her so that we can get some movement, right? We have to be coordinated. It's not the Bernie Sanders, well, Bernie didn't win because the Democrats decided to tank all of his progress, and they spent money to tank his progress, and now everyone's scattered to the winds. No, Bernie's followers should have all lined up and said, we're going to do this. But if you can't have that kind of coordination and that kind of commitment, then we do scatter to the winds. And then the people who have the money and have the power continue to win in a system that's designed for them to win.
Exactly, because they do have the coordination. Like, if you see, like with 2020, during the primaries, everybody dropped out and put their support behind Biden to make Bernie Sanders no longer a viable candidate in people's eyes. It's like, oh, well, if everybody else that was running... Firstly, I don't even want to get into this. I was about to go into my diatribe about the last 20 years. Look, the fact they had a million freaking people running at once was to divide people and do this from the beginning, but whatever. But moving forward, I bring that up so that like people can see the pattern, because I feel like it'll happen again. You'll get all these different people that are throwing their hat in the ring. They're like, well, I can do this. Again, going back to individualism. Some people may be well-intentioned. Some people may just be trying to take advantage of a volatile political situation. But either way, so many people thinking that, oh, well, I have such a unique perspective, or I think that I have the integrity to blah, 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 blah. And then you have so many people voting in different ways. If we could organize the way that the other side organized, it wouldn't matter how many ad dollars they had, because at the end of the day, the votes are free. The actual going into the voting booth or mailing it in if you're able to, that's what actually matters. And even with the shitty electoral college, if we overwhelmingly, vote together, then like even a system like the electoral college can't keep out an overwhelming collective, a coordinated collective. But it starts by, again, that, like we said a little while ago, the initial barrier in a lot of people's minds was breaking them free of this individualistic mentality and having them just ask themselves a basic question: how do my actions and beliefs impact others? Because when we keep holding on to our beliefs, like, well, this is what I believe, so I'm going to uphold what I believe. Yes, you have every right to believe what you believe. But when your beliefs and actions negatively impact others, then it no longer becomes a personal decision. It's a community decision. And that's what we fundamentally aren't taught, or it's not instilled in our culture, to think that way.
100%. I stopped to look up the other third-party candidates because there's another one I wanted to mention, and I'm so bad with names I can't remember. And so I'm sitting here like, oh my God, what is this person's name? It's like Carla or Carolyn or something like that. And like my brain is just blanking. But it is very important for us to focus on coordinating our efforts. I think that's the theme of this conversation. So not only in our own individual actions and choices, but in our social media content, right? I'm part of a group that is trying to, and they're like a couple of weeks away from launching their campaign, but we're trying to coordinate and collect and, for lack of a better word, unionize content creators on the internet so that we can have collective bargaining power because of all of the suppression tactics, of all of the discriminatory practices to people like myself who are Indigenous and Latina, people who are queer or neurodivergent or disabled or, Black. Everybody is essentially everybody who doesn't fit dominant culture mindset and mentality are being suppressed. So there's a few people who do break that mold, but for the most part, the rest of us are just kind of stuck here talking to the same 10 people. If we can start coordinating our social media presence, our messages, our action, our activities, we can start being more powerful. And maybe it's for us to call to same as what happened to Vine. We all just leave en masse, right? Like we need to decide what we're going to do together and do it together, move as a unit and be coordinated. But also when we get that powerful, the system, the governments, the people who are in power are going to throw money at not only dismantling and destroying us, attacking us financially and personally, but literally killing us. We're still living through an ongoing genocide here in the United States, on top of seeing all the genocides happening in Palestine, in the Congo, in Sudan, the historical genocides that we have seen the US perpetrate and fund, like Venezuela, Chile, Cuba, all of these places that have been affected, Mexico, Haiti. Basically every country you can think of has been affected by the colonization of the United States. It started out with European colonization, but we took over and we decided we were going to destroy the world. So
we were like, hold our beer.
Right? Watch me. And so, yeah, we as the people who are living through this need to fight back, and we fight back with what we have.
Absolutely. I love that. And that is a perfect ending note. I want to thank you again, Jesenia, for your time and your perspective. Again, if you could let everybody know where they can follow you, One Free Community, and the efforts that you guys are doing, that would be great. And I'll also make sure to leave links in the description.
Absolutely. So my website is neurospicynetworking.com. The community that I help found and organize is onefreecommunity.com. Both of those have a TikTok with the same name. And our community is growing. We're open to everybody, but we always center BIPOC voices, we center disabled voices, and we center the most marginalized. So it's a neurodivergent-led, BIPOC-led community. Its focus is networking with other communities and building social mutual aid. So we are not funded and we're looking for funding, but we have made so much impact in the year that we've existed, and we have collaborated and coordinated with people like Calling Up Justice and other organizations that are doing amazing work. And so the places that you can find us, you start with neurospicynetworking.com, and then you can find all of the connections and the web of connections that we're creating. And my goal is to really network all of these small and independent groups together and start sharing our resources and start being coordinated. And the more that we can do this, the farther reach we can have. Think of mycelium network. We can make it happen.
Woo! Yes. Take a breath, take a breather, feel the present moment, come back. Because I know there was a lot. I know some people may have gotten activated by that, and I hope you got activated in a good way, in a positive way. You let it sit, you let it marinate, and let it soak in. I really want to thank Jesenia again for her time and her perspective. Again, I'm going to leave links in the description where you can find her, One Free Community, and all of the amazing work that they are doing all of the time, but especially right now in spreading awareness and connecting us as a community to resources and information about Palestine, Congo, Sudan, and ongoing efforts here at home. I love you guys. I thank you so much for your support and for coming back and sticking with me. Y'all know your girl got ADHD. I know I don't talk about that as much. I usually stick to autism, but ADHD is a big part of me too. So sometimes, the executives don't always be functioning. Sometimes your girl gets hyper-focused on one thing when I have a million things going on and I'm still trying to balance it out. But this is still supposedly a weekly podcast. So even though you guys got a double episode this week, we will be back next week with a new episode, back with our new format that we've been using for season 2 with some more TikTok therapy and another great guest. So I will see you guys back here next week. And in the meantime, I love you. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe.